Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 1 of our story. If you like this What If story and want to see part 2, let me know in the comments below. Before we start, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. Also, check the description for more great content and my playlist. This story was posted by 𝐼𝐴203 on Wattpad. Now let's start. It was morning in Kamino Ward Hospital, where Izuku was resting after the attack on the Pussycats training camp and the raid on the League of Villains base. Suddenly, the door burst open to reveal his classmates. Denki exclaimed that Izuku had fought a big villain at the training camp. Confused, Izuku asked what they were talking about. Mina informed him that his fight against a formidable villain had been recorded and broadcasted in the news, and everyone was talking about it. She showed him the video of his battle to protect Kota against Muscular, leaving Izuku in shock. Izuku thought to himself that now everyone would wonder about his quirk and might come after him. He then acknowledged his classmates, who expressed their shock at his victory but reminded him to rest and recover so he could return to UA. As they left, Izuku lay back on his bed, hoping things wouldn't be too bad. Meanwhile, a woman with white hair and bunny ears was jogging. It was none other than the rabbit hero, Miruko. She stopped for a break to drink some water when her phone rang. Checking her messages, she found a video titled, "World's Youngest Hero," featuring Izuku. Initially skeptical, she decided to watch it and quickly became engrossed. As the video showed Izuku finishing off Muscular with a powerful move, Miruko felt exhilarated, realizing the potential he had and imagining him as a great sidekick. Elsewhere, a young woman in her apartment watched the same video of Izuku fighting Muscular. Intrigued by the handsome young man who had taken down the villain, she contemplated whether he was worthy enough to take on Dusty Ash. Back at the hospital, Izuku was discharged and stepped outside to find All Might waiting for him with a car, sporting a cast. All Might explained that he and ectoplasm were there to take Izuku home, reassuring him that UA had given students 3 days off, so he had nothing to worry about. Izuku accepted this and got into the car. After a short drive, they arrived at his and his mother's apartment. The moment he walked in, his mother hugged him tightly, tears streaming down her face as she expressed her relief that he was safe. Izuku tried to calm her down, assuring her that he was fine. To distract her, he offered to heat up some leftover food for them to eat together, which helped ease her worries. Meanwhile, 2 days earlier, Tamura Shigaraki and the rest of the League of Villains were resting in a nearby warehouse after being teleported to an unknown location by 𝐼𝐴. Tamura expressed his frustration about their situation, while Kurohige reassured him that they were safe from pro-heroes. Tamura was anxious about Twice's claim that he had found someone valuable to recruit into the League. Toga expressed her trust in Twice, and soon after, Twice entered with a man wearing a bird-like mask. Tamura inquired about the newcomer, who introduced himself as Kai Chisaki, also known as 𝐼𝐴. He explained that he was the young head of the Shai Hasaikai and that his organization had remained in the shadows while others disbanded. 𝐼𝐴 proposed that if he were to join the League, he would need to be their leader. Tamura firmly stated that he was the next leader, leading to a tense exchange between them. Magna intervened, rushing at 𝐼𝐴 with her quirk, but he swiftly countered her attack. In a shocking display of power, 𝐼𝐴 demonstrated his abilities, leaving the League members stunned. As tensions escalated, Tamura attempted to intervene, but bullets were fired, complicating the situation further. But then some people entered, and a large figure stepped in front of 𝐼𝐴, only to be swiftly decayed by Tamura. 𝐼𝐴 acknowledged their arrival, expressing relief that they had finally shown up. Tamura questioned why he had been told they weren't followed, while Twice insisted they had not been. 𝐼𝐴 mentioned that they would introduce themselves the following day at their headquarters but had a quick question before leaving. Who was the kid they were discussing? He pulled out his phone, displaying a post about Izuku and Muscular's fight. Tamura dismissed the boy, admitting he knew little about him aside from his name and the fact that he had fought a member of their Vanguard action squad. 𝐼𝐴 decided it was time to leave, and he and his men departed, leaving the League to recover from the loss of a member and another who had sustained serious injuries. It was now 12:30 a.m., and Izuku headed downstairs to check for something to eat in the fridge. He silently hoped that things wouldn't worsen as more people saw his fight against the villain at camp. As he reached the kitchen, he spotted his mother making breakfast. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 rushed over to him, her face lighting up with joy. She informed him that she had prepared rice bowls, fish, and his favorite, 𝐾𝐻𝐬. Grateful, Izuku thanked her and made his way to the dining table. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Izuku and 𝐼𝐻𝐬 exchanged glances before she turned off the stove and followed him to the door. When Izuku opened it, he was surprised to find All Might in his skinny form, wearing a cast. He greeted Izuku warmly, but the young hero was taken aback, questioning why All Might was there instead of recovering. All Might explained that Aizawa needed his help to reassure UA parents about the safety of the dorms, which would soon have enhanced security. He asked if he could come in, and 𝐼𝐻𝐬 eagerly invited him inside, still in awe of his presence. As All Might took a seat, 𝐼𝐻𝐬 offered him a cup of tea. He mentioned that the school had sent a letter regarding the situation. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 revealed her concerns, expressing her fears for Izuku's safety since he had started attending UA. She recounted watching his fight on television and how grateful she was as a citizen, but as a mother, she was terrified. She reminisced about Izuku's childhood, recalling a time when he played hero with her, and lamented that perhaps staying quirkless would have made him happier. Izuku protested, wanting to attend UA, but 𝐼𝐻𝐬 was adamant that she could not entrust his safety to the school, especially after the recent villain attack. In a moment of frustration, Izuku ran out the door and slammed it behind him. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 called after him, but he returned moments later, holding a letter. He explained that he had received a thank you letter from a boy he had saved at the training camp, someone who had once hated heroes. This made him feel happy and hopeful, reinforcing his longing to become a hero, regardless of the school he attended. All Might, moved by Izuku's determination, transformed into his muscular form and knelt before them, declaring that he believed Izuku was the right person to succeed him as the symbol of peace. He acknowledged the dangers he had faced but expressed his longing to guide and protect Izuku, promising to do everything in his power to support him. 𝐼𝐻𝐬, overwhelmed by his words, fell to her knees, urging All Might to take care of her son and promising to allow Izuku to pursue his dream if All Might could promise to protect him. All Might assured her that he would do everything he could, and after a heartfelt exchange, he asked Izuku if he had a moment to talk outside. Izuku agreed, and they stepped outside, where All Might brought up the recent news coverage of Izuku's fight. He informed Izuku that there would be an interview about it, and he, along with 𝐒𝐻𝐬 and 𝗟𝗏𝗯, would accompany him to ensure everything went smoothly. Izuku was surprised but agreed to the plan, asking about the time of the interview. All Might informed him it would be at 5:30 p.m., reminding him to be prepared. After their conversation, All Might waved goodbye and left in his car, while Izuku returned inside, letting out a sigh. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 asked if everything was all right, and Izuku reassured her that it was, mentioning he was going for a walk. She cautioned him to be careful, and he promised he would be. Izuku put on his hoodie to avoid being noticed as he stepped out the door and began walking. A few minutes later, he heard a voice calling out to him. It was his friend, Shoto Todoroki. Shoto approached and explained that he had come to pick up some food for himself and his siblings. Izuku mentioned that he was just walking around to clear his mind and offered to help with the food. Shoto accepted the offer, and they headed to the store together. After gathering the items they needed, they made their way to Shoto's house. Upon arrival, Izuku was surprised by the size of Shoto's home. Just as Shoto was about to thank him for his help, his sister, Fuyumi, opened the door. She recognized Izuku immediately and expressed her excitement about meeting the boy who had faced a giant villain. Izuku explained that he was there to assist Shoto with lunch preparations. Fuyumi invited Izuku to stay for lunch, and after confirming with Shoto that it was all right, he accepted. As they entered the house, another voice called out to Shoto. It was their brother, Natsuo, who had come out for lunch. Natsuo was equally surprised to see Izuku and recognized him as the boy who had defeated the giant villain. While they enjoyed their meal, Fuyumi accidentally spilled tea on Izuku's shirt. She quickly apologized and went to fetch a cloth to help dry it. In the process, she caught a glimpse of Izuku's toned physique, causing her to blush and rush out of the room. Shoto and Natsuo exchanged knowing smirks, realizing their sister had developed a crush on Izuku. Izuku commented on how nice it was that they all got along, except for their father. Natsuo expressed his resentment towards their father for the pain he had caused their mother, while Shoto mentioned he planned to visit their mother the next day. He thought she would like to meet the person who had helped him embrace his quirk. Izuku was surprised to learn he had played such a role in Shoto's growth. As they continued chatting, Izuku checked the time on his phone and realized he needed to leave soon. Shoto noticed that Izuku seemed distracted and asked if he was all right. Izuku explained that All Might had visited him and mentioned reporters wanting to interview him about his recent battle. Natsuo chimed in, noting that everyone was curious about the details of the fight. Fuyumi returned after regaining her composure and asked if Izuku's shirt had dried. He confirmed it was dry, and Natsuo teased Fuyumi about calling Izuku by his first name, causing her to blush again and deny any special meaning behind it. Izuku was confused by the exchange. Just then, Izuku's phone buzzed with a message from All Might, reminding him of the interview. Realizing the time, he quickly apologized and prepared to leave. Shoto, Natsuo, and Fuyumi all bid him farewell, with Fuyumi stealing glances at him as he exited, her cheeks still flushed. As Izuku ran down the street towards the news station, he activated One for All at 5% to speed up his pace. He arrived at the building where All Might, Snipe, and ectoplasm were waiting for him. All Might greeted him enthusiastically, and Izuku apologized for being late. Snipe reassured him that he still had time to prepare before the interview. Ectoplasm urged them to enter the building, where a woman informed them that the recording studio was still being set up and invited them to wait. She pointed out the snacks and water available. With a few minutes to spare, Izuku decided to head to the restroom before the interview began. All Might and the two other UA teachers were engaged in conversation. Snipe wondered how the interview with the young student would unfold. Ectoplasm expressed hope that the boy wouldn't be too nervous, as that could hinder his performance. All Might shared his concern for young Midoriya's ability to handle the situation. Snipe echoed that sentiment, hoping for the best. After a few minutes, Izuku emerged from the bathroom, greeted warmly by Ectoplasm. He asked how much time remained before his interview, and Snipe informed him there were about 10 minutes left. Izuku decided to take a moment to relax before being called in. All Might inquired about how Izuku felt regarding his newfound popularity, noting that many were beginning to recognize him for his recent fight. Izuku admitted he felt a mix of shock and concern, realizing that his victory might attract the attention of villains eager to test his quirk. As they spoke, a woman appeared at the door, announcing that it was time for Izuku. He felt a surge of nerves but thanked his teachers for their support as he prepared to enter the interview room. Upon stepping inside, he saw a man and a woman seated, waiting for him. They welcomed him and invited him to take a seat. The recording crew aimed their cameras at them, signaling the start of the interview. The man introduced the segment, highlighting Izuku's recent battle against the notorious villain Muscular, who had recorded the fight with the expectation that Izuku would be defeated. The woman added that, against all odds, Izuku had triumphed with a single powerful punch. The camera turned to Izuku, who felt a wave of embarrassment wash over him as he greeted the audience. The man asked Izuku why he aspired to be a hero. Izuku explained that he wanted to follow in the footsteps of his idol, All Might, and save people with a smile. The woman probed into his past before joining UA, prompting Izuku to share his experiences of being bullied for being quirkless during his childhood. He recounted how the torment continued until he met All Might, who inspired him with words of encouragement. The man and woman listened intently, visibly moved by Izuku's story. Izuku continued, explaining that after meeting All Might, his quirk finally manifested. The man expressed amazement at the similarity between Izuku's quirk and All Might's, while Izuku clarified that, despite appearances, his power came with significant drawbacks. All Might felt proud of Izuku for successfully keeping the secret of One for All hidden from the public. Izuku reflected on his determination to become a hero, regardless of the challenges he faced. His words resonated with many, inspiring those who felt powerless in society. Meanwhile, a young girl on an island watched the interview with her father. She felt a connection to Izuku's struggles and was inspired by his resilience, imagining a future where they might meet. As the interview concluded, the woman thanked Izuku for sharing his story. He humbly brushed off the praise, and the man wrapped up the segment, expressing gratitude to the viewers. After the cameras stopped rolling, the woman told Izuku he could leave. Stepping out, Izuku was greeted by his teachers, who praised him for handling the interview well. All Might took a moment to express his pride in Izuku for safeguarding the secret of One for All. Izuku voiced his concerns about the potential repercussions of the interview, but All Might encouraged him to remain hopeful. They left the building and headed to the car, unaware that Izuku's popularity had surged even further due to the interview. On Monday, Izuku prepared for school, hoping for a smooth day ahead. His mother, 𝐼𝐻𝐬, checked to ensure he had everything he needed before he rushed out the door, bidding her farewell. Outside, he spotted 𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐬 and 𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐬 near a car, ready for the day ahead. Waiting for him, Izuku felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. Mr. 𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐬 and Mr. 𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐬 were assigned to him, as All Might had informed him. 𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐬 explained that 𝐒𝐮𝐩𝐃𝐞𝐭 believed it was better for them to guard and assist him as he traveled to necessary locations. 𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐬 added that it was a precaution in case he encountered trouble. Izuku felt overwhelmed but complied as they entered the car, heading toward UA. Upon arrival, Izuku rushed inside, eager to reach his classroom. As he ran through the building, a throng of students, mostly girls, surged toward him, likely hoping to ask questions after his recent interview. 𝐼𝐻𝐬, standing at the classroom door, waved his hand to get Izuku's attention. Izuku dashed to the door just as 𝐼𝐻𝐬 closed it, blocking the crowd that clamored for his attention. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 inquired about the commotion, and Izuku explained that the students had spotted him and chased him down. ― remarked that it was fortunate Izuku had escaped, or they might have needed to ask the teachers for help. Izuku then asked about Mr. Izawa, and just then, a figure appeared at the door, a scarf billowing behind him. Izawa asked if Izuku had attracted the large group of students. Izuku nodded, and Izawa sighed, indicating that the interview had made Izuku more popular than before. He reminded the class to take their seats as class was about to start. Once settled, Izawa informed them that their parents had given permission for them to live in the dorms on campus, which were now ready. Mina expressed her excitement about the completed dorms, and Izawa confirmed that they would be moving in that day. The class followed him outside, where they marveled at the size of the new building. Izawa expressed his relief that Class A was back together, and the students shared their concerns about convincing their parents to allow them to move in. Tsuyu noted her worries about the teachers returning, given the recent events at the press conference. Izawa acknowledged the situation had changed, and he suspected it was easier for the administration to keep the current faculty rather than revamp it entirely. He then shifted the conversation to the provisional hero licenses they were supposed to receive during training camp. Izawa called out the names of 5 students who had broken the rules to rescue Bakugo. The class reacted with surprise, and Izawa clarified that if it weren't for All Might's retirement, he would have expelled them. However, he noted that this was no longer relevant. Turning to Izuku, Izawa explained that due to the villain recording his fight, the school had decided to assign staff to protect him, anticipating that he might attract unwanted attention. Izuku couldn't help but think that it seemed excessive. As they entered the building, they were amazed by the common area, which would serve as the main floor for them. Izawa pointed out the amenities, including bathrooms, a kitchen, and a television. He explained that there were 5 floors, with the remaining floors designated for their individual rooms. Mineta, excited about the girls' bathroom being nearby, was quickly reprimanded by Izawa, who reminded everyone that the facilities were separated by gender. Izawa described the features of each room, including air conditioning and a fridge, and informed them that their belongings had already been moved in. He then asked if there were any questions, but the students shook their heads. Izawa announced he would leave them to decorate their rooms as they pleased. Once Izawa departed, the students began unpacking. Mina soon entered with the other girls, proposing they explore each other's rooms to see whose was the coolest. Just then, Todoroki approached Izuku, explaining that he needed to visit his mother and had invited Izuku to join him. Although disappointed, the others understood and encouraged them to share their experiences when they returned. Izuku hesitated, wondering if they needed permission to leave campus, but Todoroki reassured him that he had already taken care of it. Plus, they mentioned that since Izuku was with Shoto, they wouldn't need to send a staff member with him. Izuku agreed, and they walked out the door, heading outside. After a few minutes, they arrived at the hospital, a place familiar to Izuku because his mother worked there. Shoto noticed Izuku's contemplative expression and asked if something was wrong. Izuku explained that this was the same hospital where his mother worked, as he often visited her to keep her company. Shoto acknowledged this with a compliment, and Izuku thanked him, feeling a bit shy. They entered the building and walked into the lobby, where a nurse was working on a computer. Upon seeing Izuku, she brightened up. The nurse greeted Izuku warmly, inquiring about his mother. Izuku replied that his mom was doing well, and the nurse then acknowledged Shoto, asking if he was there to see his mother again. Shoto confirmed this and mentioned that he brought Izuku along to meet her. The nurse asked why, and Shoto explained that Izuku had inspired him to use his flames, and he wanted his mother to meet the person who had motivated him. The nurse directed them to room 153 on the 3rd floor and wished them a good visit. They took the elevator to the 3rd floor, and after a short walk, they reached the room. Shoto instructed Izuku to wait outside while he went in to see his mother. Izuku nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. Shoto knocked on the door and announced his presence. He heard a faint voice inviting him in and opened the door to find his mother, Rei, inside. She greeted him and asked how he had been. Shoto explained that they had encountered some trouble at their training camp, where they were attacked by villains. Rei expressed concern about any injuries, and Shoto reassured her that while some classmates had minor injuries, only 2 were significantly affected by a gas attack. They then shifted the conversation to Rei's time in the hospital, where she mentioned having made a friend, someone who had been kind to her despite their own struggles. Shoto revealed that he had brought Izuku along, prompting Rei to express her curiosity about the boy who had inspired her son. Shoto called for Izuku to come in, and as he entered, both he and Rei were taken aback upon recognizing each other. Shoto, confused by their reaction, asked if they already knew each other. Rei explained that Izuku had been visiting her and keeping her company during her time in the hospital. Shoto encouraged Izuku to share how they met, leading to a flashback of their encounters. In the flashback, Izuku had initially come to the hospital to visit his mother but noticed a woman with white hair who seemed hesitant to engage. Despite his attempts to speak with her, she often retreated to her room. Over time, Izuku persisted, and eventually, they began to communicate through the door. After several days, they finally met face to face, and during their conversations, Rei opened up about her struggles and the challenges she faced due to her past. Izuku, moved by her story, offered her comfort, and they formed a bond through their shared experiences. As the flashback concluded, Shoto expressed his gratitude to Izuku for helping his mother cope with her past. Izuku reassured him that his mother was aware of Rei's situation and was working to ensure she would find her freedom. Rei felt a wave of hope at the thought of leaving the hospital, and in a moment of shyness, she asked Izuku if they could go out together once she was discharged. However, her question was interrupted by the arrival of 𝐼𝐼𝐬, Izuku's mother, who entered the room with a cheerful greeting. 𝐼𝐼𝐬 acknowledged Izuku and expressed her surprise at seeing him there with Shoto, whom she recognized from the sports festival. As they chatted, Izuku checked the time and realized they needed to leave to return to campus before curfew. He apologized to Rei, promising to see her again soon. "It's fine, Izuku. I hope we can meet again after I can leave." Izuku expressed his hope for a future meeting. Shoto mentioned that he needed to catch up with his mom for a moment. Izuku agreed, and 𝐼𝐼𝐬 said her goodbyes, wishing them a good day as they departed. Shoto approached his mother, curious about her intentions. He asked if she was trying to ask Midoriya out, noting the age difference. Rei, blushing, admitted that she couldn't help but feel happy around Izuku, recalling how he treated her with kindness and care. Shoto smiled, realizing that Izuku had brought a sense of love back into his mother's life. He then took out his phone, opening a folder titled, "How to Get Midoriya Together with Mom and Fuyumi," and thought about the challenges they might face, considering other girls might be interested in him after his recent interview and fight. Shoto bid his mother farewell and left to meet Izuku in the lobby. They returned to UA and entered the dorms, where their friends greeted them. Mina asked how their day went, and Shoto replied that it went well. He inquired about the room evaluations, and Toru explained that the girls had looked through all the boys' rooms, except for Mina's, and voted on the coolest one. Izuku asked who won, and Mina revealed that they voted for Sato because of his baking skills. Surprised, Izuku learned that Sato baked as a hobby. He decided to train outside and left to focus on his practice. Meanwhile, Miruko was walking home while re-watching Izuku's interview from the previous day. She pondered if he was related to All Might and felt compelled to congratulate him. As she walked, she passed two girls in school uniforms. The short red-haired girl was an assistant to the other girl, who had periwinkle hair, named 𝐒𝐮𝐬. Saiko expressed her concern for Izuku, wishing she could protect him. An unnamed girl asked if Saiko was interested in him, to which she hesitated but agreed to continue walking. Elsewhere, in the Pussycats agency building, Mandalay, also known as Shino, was watching Izuku's interview, grateful for his heroism in saving her nephew. Ryuko teased her about developing feelings for Izuku, but Shino denied it, feeling too old for him. Ryuko mentioned that she and Tomoko were interested in him, especially since he had inspired hope in Tomoko as a fellow quirkless individual. Shino glanced at Izuku's picture on her phone, feeling a twinge of jealousy and thinking about her own chances. Back with Izuku, he trained for about 45 minutes before heading to bed. After some time, he heard a knock at his door. When he opened it, he found 𝗟𝗏 in casual clothing. She mentioned that she couldn't sleep and asked if she could join him. Izuku felt a blush but agreed. They settled into bed together, unaware that their friends were watching with jealousy. The next morning, Izuku woke up to find 𝗟𝗏 sleeping on his chest, causing him to blush. As she stirred awake, they both realized their position and quickly moved apart, flustered. They apologized to each other and decided it was time to get to class. Suddenly, the door swung open to reveal Iida, who was surprised to see them. He quickly apologized and left, reminding them to hurry and not to do anything inappropriate, which only added to their embarrassment. They hurried to change into their uniforms and made their way to class, where their classmates noticed 𝗟𝗏's attempts to hold hands with Izuku, sparking jealousy among the other girls. After a few minutes, the bell rang, and they took their seats just as Aizawa entered the room. He greeted them and reminded them of their summer focus on obtaining provisional hero licenses, emphasizing the responsibility that came with it. The class responded in unison, acknowledging the seriousness of their task. Only 50% of students passed the tests required each year. Mineta wondered if it was really that hard to obtain a provisional license. Aizawa explained that today they would focus on creating something new. The door opened to reveal Midnight, 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐼, and ectoplasm. Aizawa informed them they would be working on two ultimate moves. Kaminari and Kirishima expressed their excitement about the idea of ultimate moves, while Mina, Kaminari, Kirishima, and Siro shared their enthusiasm about the exam being a normal school activity. Izuku felt happy about the opportunity to learn something new. Ectoplasm clarified that an ultimate move was one that would ensure victory against an opponent. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐼 added that it should be unique to each individual, something that no one else could replicate. Midnight emphasized that their moves should represent who they are, noting that most pro heroes have an ultimate move, and those who don't are at a disadvantage. Aizawa acknowledged that this might sound abstract but promised to explain more as the day progressed. He instructed them to change into their costumes and meet in Gym Gamma. After changing, they gathered at a medium-sized building. Aizawa introduced Gym Gamma, also known at the academy as the Training Dining Land, or TDL, which reminded them of the 𝐒𝐮𝐩𝐩. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐼 explained that the facility was his idea, designed to prepare unique terrains and obstacles for each student. He stated that here they would learn to serve up justice. Kaminari found this concept impressive. Iida raised his hand to ask about the advantages of having ultimate moves for the provisional exam, but Aizawa reminded him that he had asked 2 questions and advised him to calm down before explaining. Aizawa elaborated that the job of a hero is to save people from various dangers, including crime, accidents, and disasters. The licensing exam would assess how well they could handle such situations, not just through fighting but also by evaluating their ability to gather information, make quick decisions, and communicate effectively. Midnight stressed the importance of being able to prevail in battle, stating that those with an ultimate move would likely achieve stronger results. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 encouraged them to be consistent, as their circumstances should not dictate their future success. 𝗟𝗶𝗸 pointed out that an ultimate move could also be a non-attack ability, using Iida's Reciproc Burst as an example. Iida was surprised to learn that he had been utilizing an ultimate move all along. 𝗏𝗏 likened it to a secret weapon that could give them an edge in any situation. Midnight praised the example of 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽𝐸, who could capture opponents in an instant with his lacquered chain prison. Aizawa noted that their training camp had been interrupted, but the practice they had received in developing their quirks was essential for creating these defining abilities. He then announced that they would be working hard to develop powerful moves over the next 10 days, which would be their summer vacation training. He encouraged them to think about improving their costumes as well. With a stern expression, Aizawa expected them to give their all. They all affirmed their commitment. Izuku contemplated what his ultimate move might be. After a few minutes, they began their training. Ojiro sparred with an ectoplasm clone, struggling to land a hit. The clone countered and knocked him back, advising him to reconsider his reliance on his tail. Ojiro felt conflicted, questioning the importance of his tail as his power. Meanwhile, Mina trained with another ectoplasm clone, attempting to create her ultimate move. She formed her hands into a cup and attempted to shoot acid, but it was slow. The clone suggested she create a nozzle with her fingers to improve her aim and reach. Mina adjusted her hands and successfully shot acid much faster than before, feeling accomplished. The clone encouraged her to focus on increasing the potency of her acid. Momo worked with another clone, learning to create two objects simultaneously. The clone guided her to start with something simple. Izuku watched everyone making progress, but his thoughts were interrupted when an ectoplasm clone playfully kicked him. The clone questioned why he was daydreaming. Izuku explained his concerns about overexerting his arms and not knowing what kind of move he could create. The clone acknowledged the uniqueness of his quirk and suggested they focus on developing his power. Aizawa observed his students as they trained when he suddenly heard a familiar voice. All Might appeared in his skinny form, sporting a cast on his arm. Aizawa acknowledged him, and All Might quickly transformed into his muscular form, excitedly announcing that he had the day off. Aizawa urged him to focus on recuperating and lesson planning, to which Toshinori responded with a light-hearted remark about the cold reception he received. They were working on making their moves now, and there was no way Toshinori could miss being there to see it. He noticed Izuku talking with an ectoplasm clone. Toshinori thought about young Midoriya, recognizing that he seemed to be having some trouble. Suddenly, an explosion caught his attention. He turned to see Bakugo battling against an ectoplasm clone. Bakugo shouted as he unleashed another powerful explosion, enough to defeat the clone. He then turned to face the real ectoplasm, who was standing on the ground creating more clones. Bakugo declared that he had defeated the clone and demanded another. Ectoplasm complied, creating another clone while Toshinori observed. Toshinori marveled at Bakugo's incredible abilities. Aizawa agreed, noting that Bakugo would only grow stronger in the future. Some of the class watched Bakugo in awe, discussing the moves they had thought of before joining you. Toshinori approached Izuku, offering advice. He urged Izuku to think for himself, pointing out that he was still trying to imitate him. Izuku realized he hadn't fully grasped that concept, but he couldn't finish his thought as Toshinori walked away to speak with Kirishima. Aizawa, meanwhile, pondered Toshinori's sudden proficiency. After a few minutes, training concluded, and Aizawa instructed the students on what to do next. Yet, Toshinori's words echoed in Izuku's mind. He contemplated the need to develop his own style and how to reinforce his arms to better control one for all at maximum power. He felt determined to achieve his goal, unaware that Uraraka and Iida were also heading toward the development studio. Iida noted that Uraraka was focusing on making her body float, while she explained that increasing her mobility would allow her to utilize the martial arts she learned during her internship even more. Ida expressed his intent to reduce the drawbacks of his quirk by asking the development studio to improve his radiator. Just then, the door blasted open with an explosion, sending Izuku back and shocking Ida and 𝗟𝗏𝐼𝐼. They heard a female voice exclaiming in pain. As footsteps approached, they recognized it was one of the teachers, 𝗏𝗏𝗱. He cautioned that mixing everything in the lab together was a bad idea. The familiar voice of 𝗏𝗏𝗱 followed, and she giggled as she defended her approach to invention. 𝗏𝗏𝗱 scolded her for nearly blowing up the design studio, but 𝗏𝗏 was too focused on her work to pay him much mind. When the smoke cleared, 𝗟𝗏𝗱 and Ida were surprised to see 𝗏𝗏 on top of Izuku. 𝗏𝗏 greeted Izuku, who slowly opened his eyes, feeling flustered. She recognized him from his fight against a villain and mentioned that he was now ranked as one of the youngest heroes in Japan. Izuku was taken aback, feeling dizzy at the thought of becoming an official pro hero after completing his exam. As he fainted from shock, Ida and 𝗟𝗏𝗱 rushed to catch him. 𝗏𝗏𝗱 urged 𝗏𝗏 to leave Izuku alone. After he regained consciousness, they were allowed inside the studio, where 𝗏𝗏𝗱 sat down. He confirmed he had heard from 𝒟𝗟𝗱 about their costume upgrades. Ida responded affirmatively, and 𝗏𝗏𝗱 instructed them to hand over their design instructions. They retrieved their instruction papers and submitted them. 𝗏𝗏𝗱 explained his authority to make minor adjustments to costumes made externally, while major changes would require an application to the design professionals. Once approved, the new costumes would meet government standards. Izuku inquired about reducing the strain on his arm ligaments, wondering if it was possible. 𝗏𝗏𝗱 considered the request and noted that since Izuku primarily fought with his fists and fingers, he could likely assist him quickly. 𝗟𝗏𝗱 expressed her excitement for Izuku, who was equally enthusiastic. However, he soon felt 𝗏𝗏 touching his arm, causing him to panic. 𝗏𝗏 assessed the situation, while 𝗟𝗏𝗱 felt a pang of jealousy as she watched. "What are you doing to him?" 𝗏𝗏 giggled as she felt out Izuku's muscles. Looking up at his face, she exclaimed how much more muscular he was than he appeared. As she rubbed her finger in circles on his chest, a new sensation stirred within her, curiosity mixed with admiration. Izuku felt increasingly flustered, especially as Achiko, feeling a twinge of jealousy, clung to his right arm. She suggested they move on and ask 𝗏𝗏𝗱 about their costumes. Izuku stammered in agreement, but 𝗏𝗏 tugged him back, holding onto his left arm, insisting she wanted to know what he thought. The two began to bicker, leaving Izuku's face red with embarrassment. Ida observed the scene, contemplating whether he should intervene. He decided against it, knowing he would likely be caught in the crossfire of their playful rivalry. Instead, he approached 𝗏𝗏𝗱, who was busy making adjustments to their costumes. Ida informed 𝗏𝗏𝗱 about Izuku's predicament. Turning to see the two girls arguing over him, 𝗏𝗏𝗱 took action. He grabbed a water sprayer and doused them, causing both to gasp in surprise. He scolded them for their antics, noting that Izuku had fainted because of their bickering. Ida rushed to help Izuku, who was now slumped in a chair, while Achiko sat beside him, looking concerned. Ida then asked 𝗏𝗏𝗱 about the water sprayer. 𝗏𝗏𝗱 explained that it was a tool provided by the principal to help manage situations like this, referencing how he used it on Midnight to curb her more flirtatious behavior. Ida acknowledged the challenge of that approach. Izuku regained consciousness, confused about what had happened. 𝗏𝗏𝗱 explained that he had fainted due to the girls' antics. Ida added that the earlier explosion had not helped matters. 𝗏𝗏𝗱 encouraged Izuku to appreciate his relationships, hinting that 𝗏𝗏 might have a crush on him. Izuku was taken aback, his face turning bright red, while Achiko's jealousy simmered beneath the surface. As Izuku fell from his chair in shock, his friends quickly caught him. He assured them he was fine, and 𝗏𝗏𝗱 pointed out a pile of inventions in the corner, all created by 𝗏𝗏. He praised her relentless creativity, noting that she was exceptional among her peers. Izuku marveled at the inventions, realizing the potential they held for his own abilities. Afterward, they left the studio and headed to their dorms for the night. 4 days passed, filled with training and the development of new moves. On the 5th day, Aizawa observed their progress when Toshinori entered the room, inquiring about their advancements. Meanwhile, Izuku was walking toward the gym when he heard someone call his name. It was Mineta, who noticed Izuku's costume change. Izuku explained that he had added braces to reduce strain on his arms. Mineta commented on the missed opportunity to redesign his costume, but Izuku expressed his attachment to the original look, which his mother had made for him. As they entered the gym, they found Tokoyami demonstrating his ultimate move to Midnight. He showcased how Dark Shadow enhanced his strength and combat abilities, calling it Abyssal Black Body. Midnight encouraged him to ensure the name was easy to call out. Aizawa noted that some students were solidifying their fighting styles, while others were developing multiple special moves. They watched Bakugo as he focused on a concentrated blast technique. He successfully unleashed a powerful shot, celebrating his achievement. However, the force of his blast caused a section of the wall to crack and fall. Bakugo warned Toshinori just in time. Aizawa prepared to intervene, but a green blur rushed past. Izuku had kicked the falling debris into pieces, impressing Toshinori with his growing strength. Izuku reflected on how he aimed to emulate All Might's signature moves, striving to master the techniques he had inherited. That's where Izuku realized he had made a mistake, something so obvious that it had escaped his notice. He landed safely on the ground, showcasing his new shoes. He thought about how, if he was worried about his arms, he would rely on his legs instead. With a surge of energy, he activated One for All, full 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐸 style. Toshinori observed the young hero and thought to himself that Izuku had done well. He recalled a conversation from 2 days prior when he had asked Mei to create not only braces but also iron saws for him. He thought that 𝐼𝐻𝐸 had done an excellent job and decided to call this new look Costume Gamma. Turning to his mentor, Izuku expressed concern for All Might, noting how close the situation had been. Toshinori assured him he was fine, while Aizawa simply hummed in acknowledgement as Kirishima and Kaminari approached. Kaminari marveled at Izuku's impressive move, while Kirishima noted that he had always seen Izuku as more of a puncher. Izuku explained that the new iron saws were a suggestion from 𝐻𝐻𝐸, and he believed they would enhance his abilities. He mentioned that Ida had been helping him improve his technique, and while he had made progress, he still had much to learn before achieving an ultimate move. Toshinori, facing Izuku, remarked that based on the kick he had just witnessed, Izuku was further along than he realized and should be ready for the upcoming test. Aizawa interjected, cautioning Toshinori about the dangers present, to which Toshinori agreed. He then turned to Bakugo, apologizing for any scare he may have caused. Bakugo responded with a grunt and a small explosion, warning Toshinori to watch himself. Toshinori reflected on how he was now perceived as a weakling who needed protection. Izuku inquired if his classmates had made improvements to their costumes as well. Kirishima proudly stated that everyone had been making changes, emphasizing that it was the perfect time for upgrades. Kaminari excitedly mentioned his new special gear, claiming it would provide a significant power boost and inviting everyone to see it. Suddenly, Vlad King and his students interrupted, reminding Class A that Class B was scheduled to use the training room. Izuku was surprised to learn that Class B would be joining them. Kaminari lamented the timing, while Vlad King instructed Aizawa to clear the area. Nito Monoma chimed in, taunting Class A about the 50% pass rate for the license exam, suggesting that they might all fail. Izuku thought to himself about how much Monoma seemed to dislike them. Monoma continued, acknowledging Izuku's recent fame from a video against a villain but still boasting about Class B's superiority. Kaminari pointed out Monoma's hero costume, and Itsuka explained that Monoma's quirk allowed him to copy others, so he didn't need anything extra. In a surprising move, Itsuka karate chopped Monoma's neck, causing him to faint. She then apologized to Izuku for Monoma's comments, to which Izuku responded that it was fine, smiling and causing Itsuka to blush as she walked away, unaware of the jealousy brewing among the other girls. Tokoyami noted that Monoma's observations were accurate. If they took the same exam, they would be competing against each other. Aizawa clarified that their classes would be in different locations to avoid direct confrontations. Vlad King explained that there would be 2 exam days, and students from different schools would be separated to prevent clashes. Monoma lamented the missed opportunity to face Class A directly, while Kirishima and Kaminari expressed disbelief at his antics. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 noted the interesting aspect of facing students from other schools, and Izuku acknowledged that they would be taking the test earlier than most. Aizawa warned them that they would be competing against students who had trained longer and possessed unknown quirks. He advised them to keep this in mind as they prepared for the challenges ahead. After training, the group headed to the dorms as night fell. Mina groaned about the difficulty of their training, while Toru reminded her that it was called intensive training for a reason. Momo reflected on how little time remained before the exam, and Toru asked her about her ultimate move. Momo admitted she had something in mind but needed more time to develop her quirk and improve her endurance. Toru then turned to Tsuyu, who proudly declared she had perfected a move that made her even more frog-like. When Toru asked Ochako about her progress, they found her lost in thought, sipping from a juice box. Tsuyu gently tapped Ochiko's arm, startling her. When asked if she was okay, Ochako insisted everything was fine, though she felt her heart stirred by something. Mina teased her about love, causing Ochako to fluster and deny it. As the girls discussed their training, Ochako noticed Izuku outside the window, training diligently. She heard him muttering about Ida's flexibility and how he could imagine how Ida would perform. Suddenly, Ochiko's demeanor shifted from flustered to calm and contemplative, capturing the attention of her friends. They headed toward the window to see what she was looking at. They spotted Izuku outside and realized she was watching him. Jealousy filled their minds, but thoughts of the boy quickly took over. They thought he looked amazing and imagined he would be the perfect boyfriend. However, they soon recognized they might have competition, wondering if other girls were starting to like him. They exchanged glances, each silently claiming him as their own. As night fell, they decided to head to bed. Meanwhile, location, unknown time, 9:30 p.m. inside a building, a tall woman with long, wavy, white hair sat in a chair, devising a plan. Known by her villain name, Dusty Ash, her friends knew her real name. Suddenly, her friend Maguma, whose villain name was Volcano, entered the room. Maguma asked what she was planning, and she explained she was strategizing for a potential fight against Midoriya. Maguma expressed curiosity about when the fight would take place, and Dusty Ash assured him it would be soon. Maguma warned her that if she found herself in trouble, he and 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 would come to her aid. Dusty Ash acknowledged his concern, lost in thought about the challenge ahead. She resolved to prepare herself for the encounter, determined to take down Izuku Midoriya. End of Chapter 4. It was now the day of the provisional license exam at the National Dagoba Arena. 𝐽𝐻𝐬 felt nervous, while Mineta wondered about the exam and his chances of obtaining his provisional license. Aizawa bent down to face Mineta, urging him to go for it. Mineta, feeling motivated, stood tall. Aizawa addressed the students, explaining that passing the test would elevate them from novice to semi-pros. Kaminari excitedly anticipated becoming a heroic figure, and Kirishima rallied the group for their usual cheer. Unbeknownst to them, a boy wearing a hat with an S approached from behind. Kirishima prepared to lead the cheer, but the newcomer interrupted with enthusiasm. The boy, now known as Inesa, apologized profusely, startling everyone. Aizawa recognized him, and the students noted his distinctive uniform from a prestigious school in Western Japan. Izuku was taken aback, realizing that Shiketsu High School was an elite institution rivaling U. Inesa expressed his admiration for Izuku, excited to compete against him. Izuku, feeling modest, downplayed his achievements. Inesa's classmates called him over, and he excused himself, leaving Aizawa to reflect on Inesa's impressive background. Aizawa informed the students that Inesa had turned down an acceptance to U, despite his top scores, leaving them puzzled. Aizawa acknowledged Inesa's strength, prompting the students to take note of him. Suddenly, a voice called out to Aizawa, startling him. It belonged to a woman with sea green hair, dressed in a colorful hero costume. This was Emi Fukukado, known as the Smile Hero, 𝐒𝐮𝐽𝐻𝐬. She expressed her excitement at seeing Aizawa in person, but he responded with annoyance, his eye twitching slightly. Izuku looked at the heroine as she approached his teacher. 𝐒𝐮𝐽𝐻𝐬 playfully gestured toward Aizawa and herself, suggesting a whimsical idea of marriage. 𝐼𝐬𝐬 simply responded with a firm, no. Mina gasped in awe, sensing the light-hearted romance between them, while 𝐼𝐻𝐽 laughed off 𝐼𝐬𝐬's refusal. She found his response amusing and teased him about it. 𝐼𝐬𝐬 remarked on how difficult it was to communicate with her, as usual. Izuku's eyes widened in recognition, and he smiled, realizing who she was. He excitedly shared that 𝐼𝐻𝐽, known as the Smile Hero, had a quirk called Outburst, which made those around her laugh uncontrollably, impairing their thinking and movements. Her battles against villains were known for their chaotic energy. After his explanation, 𝐼𝐻𝐽 gave 𝐼𝐬𝐬 a thumbs up and proposed that if they married, they could create a joyful family filled with laughter. 𝐼𝐬𝐬 countered that such a family would be a nightmare, but she just laughed it off again. 𝐶U observed their interaction and noted that they seemed close. 𝐼𝐻𝐽 explained that their agencies used to collaborate closely, and through their mutual support, a bond had formed. 𝐼𝐬𝐬 quickly denied this notion, but 𝐼𝐻𝐽 playfully insisted on teasing him, enjoying his quick retorts. As 𝐼𝐬𝐬 closed his eyes to gather his thoughts, 𝐼𝐻𝐽 called everyone over, announcing that they were at 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐦𝐚. A crowd of students approached, and one male student expressed excitement at seeing them in person. A female student chimed in, amazed that they were all on television. 𝐼𝐻𝐽 introduced her class from 𝐾𝐮𝐬𝐽𝐬 Academy, asking everyone to be kind. One student, 𝐮𝐻𝐬, introduced himself to Izuku, acknowledging the challenges 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐬 had faced that year. Izuku struggled to respond as 𝐮𝐻𝐬 moved on to welcome Kaminari and Jiraiya, expressing admiration for their determination to become heroes. 𝐮𝐻𝐬 declared that a heart of fortitude was essential for all heroes moving forward. Izuku found his enthusiasm infectious, while Kaminari noted that 𝐮𝐻𝐬 had a charming demeanor. 𝐮𝐻𝐬 then recognized 𝗏𝐽𝐽, commending his strength from a past incident. 𝗏𝐽𝐽 appeared confused by the compliment, and 𝐮𝐻𝐬 turned his attention back to Izuku, praising his bravery in facing a tough villain to save a child. He extended his hands to both of them, promising to learn from their strength. 𝗏𝐽𝐽, however, dismissed 𝐮𝐻𝐬's gesture, insisting that his words didn't match his expression. Kirishima intervened, urging 𝗏𝐽𝐽 to be more polite, while Izuku explained that 𝗏𝐽𝐽 had always been this way. 𝐮𝐻𝐬 took it in stride, viewing it as a testament to 𝗏𝗏𝐽𝐽's strong heart. A female student approached Izuku and 𝗏𝗱, asking for their autographs, which surprised Izuku, who had never received such a request before. A male classmate teased her for being a fangirl, and Mineta attempted to offer his autograph, only to be rejected, leaving him dejected. 𝐼𝐬𝐬 then instructed the students to change into their costumes and head to orientation without wasting time. They all complied, and Jiraiya remarked on how interacting with others outside of school reminded her of their fame. As they entered the presentation room, 𝐻𝐽 turned serious and asked 𝐼𝐬𝐬 if he had informed the students about something important. He walked away without answering, leaving her frustrated. Once the students of Class 1A changed, they entered a packed presentation room filled with students from various schools. Izuku was taken aback by the large crowd, and Uraraka shared his sentiment. Suddenly, a tired man slumped over the podium began to speak, introducing himself as 𝗟𝐬𝐬 from the Heroes Safety Commission. He expressed his exhaustion and the challenges of his job, which created a comically depressed atmosphere. 𝗟𝐬𝐬 explained that all 1,540 examinees would participate in a free-for-all exercise for their provisional licenses. He noted that society was currently saturated with heroes and that doubts about their effectiveness had arisen since the arrest of a notorious villain. This made Izuku reflect on the convictions of the hero killer and how they still impacted their world. 𝗟𝐬𝐬 continued, emphasizing that regardless of motivation, telling someone risking their lives to save others not to seek rewards was a harsh reality of modern times. He highlighted the urgency of their work, stating that the time from when an incident began to when it was resolved was alarmingly short. The students were about to receive their provisional licenses and would need to adapt quickly. The screen behind him displayed the requirement: only the first 100 to meet the criteria would pass. This revelation sparked a flurry of conversation among the students, many expressing their anxiety over the limited number of spots available. Momo pointed out the sheer number of participants, emphasizing the challenge ahead. Didn't they say half would pass? 𝐼𝐮𝐦𝐦𝐬 noted that this meant less than 1% would actually succeed, which only heightened 𝐼𝐼𝐬's nerves. 𝐼𝐻 then stood up to continue his explanation. He mentioned that a lot had happened in the world, particularly regarding luck, before presenting the requirements for the test. He revealed two objects, a ball and a flat target. The screen projected images showing where the targets could be placed and the rules governing them. 𝐼𝐻 explained that each examinee would attach 3 targets to their bodies in exposed areas, avoiding the soles of their feet and armpits. They would also receive 6 ball, which would only light up the targets if they were hit. If all 3 targets lit up, that would mean defeat for the examinee. To pass this round, they needed to defeat 2 opponents. Izuku pondered how the test would unfold. He thought it was similar to the entrance exam, but facing people was entirely different from battling robots. He realized they had just enough ball to pass and wondered if they were expected to steal targets from others. The rules seemed even stricter than before. As 𝐼𝐻 continued, he announced that after they opened the area, they would distribute the targets and ball, starting 1 minute after everyone received theirs. Shoto, confused, questioned what he meant by open. Suddenly, the building began to rumble, capturing everyone's attention. It transformed, revealing a vast terrain that left everyone in shock. 𝐼𝐻 encouraged them to use their quirks wisely in the terrain they preferred. Izuku was taken aback by the sheer size of the area. 𝐼𝐻 lamented that the unnecessary complexity had disrupted his sleep and hoped for swift developments so he could rest soon. Aizawa and 𝐻𝐻𝐽 observed their students from the stands, and 𝐻𝐻𝐽 made a light-hearted comment that irritated Aizawa, who wished for a moment of peace. She remarked on the number of students Aizawa still had, noting that one had recently gained public attention. Aizawa replied that he wasn't particularly fond of his class this time. 𝐻𝐻𝐽 playfully suggested he should marry her, to which Aizawa simply told her to be quiet. As the students prepared, Izuku strategized that if the first to finish won, they wouldn't target their own classmates. He urged everyone to stay together, but Bakugo, frustrated, declared he would not stick with them. Kirishima called out to him, and Shoto decided to go off on his own, explaining the difficulty of using his power in a large group. Izuku called after him, but Mineta insisted they needed to move quickly. As they ran, 𝐻𝐻𝐽 commented on the tradition of the provisional licensing exam. Izuku shared his concerns about splitting up, explaining that everyone was already aware of their powers due to the sports festival. Uraraka and Iida realized that their school had lost the advantage of surprise. They reached an area with a long rock pillar, and Izuku speculated that other schools would also recognize the need to battle for victory. Just then, a horn sounded, and a robot announcer declared the start of the first test. 𝐻𝐻𝐽 remarked that the beginning often led to chaos. Suddenly, Izuku and his classmates were ambushed by students from Ketsubutsu Academy. Izuku recognized the situation and recalled Shindo's words about his growth. As the opposing students launched their ball, Izuku remembered All Might's encouragement and prepared to respond. With determination, he leaped into the air, activating One for All and employing full cowling with shoot style. He kicked a ball away, creating a gust of wind that pushed back the attackers. Aizawa reflected on the situation, understanding that the students needed to overcome the challenges ahead. Tokoyami prepared for an attack, summoning Dark Shadow to assist. Dark Shadow used its claws to intercept the incoming ball, while Uraraka made the ball float with her quirk. 𝐼𝐻𝐽 utilized his tape to capture the ball, and Mina transformed her hands to unleash acid, effectively destroying the projectiles. Momo created 4 shields to protect herself, Tsuyu, and Toru. Iida charged straight through the ball that were thrown, managing to dodge them. Mineta celebrated his efforts, using a long rope made from the ball of his quirk to knock away the projectiles from his opponents. Shindo observed this improvement with interest. Aizawa explained that a hero is someone who can turn around a bad situation and keep people safe. 𝐻𝐻𝐽 looked at him with curiosity, acknowledging his point. Aizawa continued, noting that if they became professionals, everyone would already know their quirks, so they had to think further ahead than others. 𝐻𝐻𝐽 grunted, realizing he was right. Izuku thought about how their training was paying off, combining his shoot style with everyone else's powers. He encouraged his classmates to keep pushing forward, and they responded enthusiastically. As the action unfolded, Izuku and 𝐒𝐮𝐲𝐽 continued to observe, with 𝐒𝐮𝐽 raising another question amid the explosions. She pointed out that while it seemed like the first to attack would win, Izuku clarified that teamwork, cooperation, and information gathering would be the true keys to success. If the students were lured by the idea of being among the first to score points, they could easily find themselves at a disadvantage. The students from 𝐾𝐮𝐬𝐽 Academy realized that most of the ball were being blocked, acknowledging 𝐒𝐮𝐻's growth in strength. One student, 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽𝐸, revealed his quirk, stiffening, which allowed him to make objects as hard as rock. He passed the hardened ball to a classmate who boasted about taking the lead. As he charged up an attack, the ball began to glow. He locked onto his targets and launched the ball into the air, sending them crashing down toward Izuku and the others. Itaijiro Totiki, another student with the boomerang quirk, prepared to throw objects at any desired trajectory, including underground. Izuku was bewildered by the sudden attack, prompting Jiraiya to step forward. She plugged her earphone jacks into her wrist amplifiers and unleashed a powerful sound wave that shook the ground, causing the 𝐾𝐮𝐬𝐽 students to dodge as the ground cracked beneath them. Mina rushed in, using her acid veil to create a protective wall for 𝐼𝐼𝐻𝐿, who expressed his gratitude for her defensive move. 𝐒𝐮𝐽𝐽 noted that the students had executed their ultimate moves. Tokoyami cloaked himself in dark shadow, preparing his own attack. He unleashed piercing twilight claws, aiming for a 𝐾𝐮𝐬𝐽 student who managed to dodge his strike. Shindo recognized that Class A had grown significantly stronger since the sports festival, including Midoriya. Mera, equipped with a headset, announced that no one had passed yet, indicating a stalemate. Izuku reflected on the situation, realizing that everyone was focused on protecting their weak points while observing their opponent's strategies. He anticipated that the fight would escalate soon. Shindo prepared to launch his own attack, cracking his knuckles and declaring his intent. 𝐒𝐮𝐽𝐽 challenged Izuku's earlier comments, emphasizing that many aspiring heroes existed, and dismissing others could lead to unexpected consequences. Shindo placed his hands on the ground, warning everyone to get away as he unleashed maximum force. The ground trembled violently, causing Izuku and the others to lose their footing. Ida urged everyone to run. As chaos ensued, Izuku fell from his perch due to the vibrations, and 𝗟𝗏𝐼𝐻𝐿 called out to him. Shindo, exhausted but determined, acknowledged that they had ultimate moves of their own. Shoto entered the area, feeling the tremors and questioning the source of the disturbance. No, it must be someone's quirk. Other people could also feel Shindo's vibrations, and some observed the unfolding events. Someone wondered what kind of quirk it was and which school it came from. Another voice reminded everyone to stay focused, as the enemy was close. Unknown to them, Inasa Yarashi was watching from the roof of a building. Mera sighed in fatigue, noticing that barely anyone had passed the exam. He thought that there should be at least one or two who had made it through by now. Suddenly, a gust of wind swept through, catching their attention. They felt the wind grow stronger, and their ball flew from their hands. One person exclaimed in surprise as they realized that only the ball were being pulled up. Inasa was creating a powerful whirlwind with his right hand, a devilish grin on his face, his eyes hidden in the shadow of his hat. He declared that heroes needed passion and expressed his admiration for their spirited fights. As the whirlwind intensified, he raised his hand behind him, preparing for an attack. He eagerly anticipated joining in their passionate fighting. With a swift motion, he swiped his hand downward, and the ball collected in the whirlwind launched toward them. They attempted to defend themselves, but it was futile as the ball struck all three of their targets. Mera lifted his head, shocked to see how many had been taken down. He exclaimed in disbelief that a single person had eliminated 120 competitors. Inasa stood up, breathing heavily, and clenched his fist in victory, proclaiming his win. Mera, still in shock, urged everyone to do their best as quickly as possible. Izuku got up, holding his head after being separated from his classmates due to Shindo's super move. He thought about how challenging it would be to use such a quirk in an area filled with buildings. Looking around, he realized he was alone. Panic set in as he recognized that they had been split up, just as 𝐾𝐮𝐬𝐽 had planned. He needed to regroup with someone soon. Being alone would spell disaster. The difference in their training and experience was significant, and he felt the pressure. He recalled Aizawa's words about Inase's abilities surpassing Shoto's and how he had underestimated Shindo's power until the super move was unleashed. Clenching his fist, he felt a mix of excitement and anxiety about the strong competitors from across the country. Suddenly, a fawn-haired girl appeared out of nowhere, performing a backflip over him while hitting her target. He was startled, realizing she was the same girl he had seen with Inasa at the entrance. This was Kami Utsushimi. She playfully scolded him for staring off into space, noting it was strange that he was smiling despite being in trouble. Izuku recognized her as a student from Shiketsu High School. Meanwhile, 𝗟𝗏 had found herself in an unfamiliar part of the exam after being separated from her classmates due to Shindo's tremoring earth move. She thought about the forceful division and the potential dangers it posed. Knowing she needed to stay calm and careful, she resolved to find her classmates first. Back with Izuku, he felt sweat trickle down his face as he faced Kami. She explained that in tests like this, some competitors targeted places with prior intel, which was why she approached him. She wanted to interact with a prestigious school and learn more about them, especially him. Izuku thought that this was not the time for a leisurely chat, especially with Ketsubutsu Academy likely approaching as a group. He activated one for all, full cowling, contemplating whether she had teammates coming to assist her or if she was simply confident. Kami threw a rock to distract him, but he dodged it, only to evade another ball she threw. He realized he needed to avoid being taken out. Suddenly, he noticed Kami had vanished. Then, she appeared beside him, rushing in with an intent to punch him with a ball. She attempted to land another hit, but it missed. Izuku prepared for a counterattack, but Kami was nowhere to be found. Suddenly, she stepped behind him, surprising him. She explained her technique, which allowed her to hide and disappear from sight, emphasizing the importance of clearing her mind. Izuku was astonished that such skills could be learned at Shiketsu. Kami expressed her curiosity about him, asking why he wanted to become a hero. She wanted to know more about his motivations, but he seized the moment, activating full cowling and swinging her off him. He looked back at her, but the ground shook violently as it erupted from an attack by the other students. One student expressed his discomfort about Shiketsu's presence. Kami glanced at them, as did Izuku, who felt a wave of panic wash over him. He realized he had failed to find anyone and was now being targeted by a large group, turning his worst fears into reality. Suddenly, the ground trembled again, and Izuku braced himself, thinking about the incoming attack. He dodged another strike from below, only to have ball hurled at him. He focused on evading, urging himself to keep moving. Concerned, a voice called out to him, and he looked up to see 𝗟𝗏 standing on a rock, reaching out to him. He recognized her immediately and felt a surge of hope. She urged him to hurry over, but he had to avoid the attacks coming his way. One of the attackers declared he wouldn't let Izuku escape, using his quirk to shoot water at 𝗟𝗏. She stumbled and fell from the rock, prompting another student to seize the opportunity to take her out. Izuku watched in horror as the attack was launched at her. He recalled a moment from the past, reflecting on how his choices had led to painful consequences. Determined to act differently this time, he propelled himself forward and caught 𝗟𝗏 just in time. He thought about how he needed to be quicker and more effective. As he landed, he swiftly pivoted, using his strength to kick the rocks around him, sending debris flying and causing the other students to lose their balance. They cursed his agility as he quickly ran away, carrying 𝗟𝗏 with him. Izuku resolved to hold back on using his full power until he was ready, relying on the support items he had to enhance his abilities. He was determined to strengthen his legs and become the hero he aspired to be. Meanwhile, Mera observed from a distance, noting the progress of the students with a hint of impatience. The Ketsubutsu Academy students remained on the rock, now visibly shaken by Izuku's display of power. As Izuku and 𝗟𝗏 hid behind a rock, he cautiously peeked out to assess the situation, wondering if their pursuers had given up. 𝗟𝗏 thanked him for saving her, feeling guilty for her earlier mistake. Izuku reassured her, insisting it wasn't her fault. 𝗟𝗏, however, began to exhibit a strange demeanor, her expression shifting as she focused on her target. Before she could act, Izuku instinctively swiped the ball from her hand, watching it roll away. He questioned whether she was truly herself. 𝗟𝐼𝐬𝐽, now appearing different, began to transform into a goo-like substance, leaving Izuku bewildered. As she morphed, she questioned his intentions, causing him to feel increasingly uneasy. He realized she was not 𝗟𝐼𝐬𝐽 at all, but a trickster named 𝐾𝐮𝐬. 𝐾𝐮𝐬 revealed her true form, and Izuku felt a wave of discomfort wash over him. He urged her to put on some clothes, but she only advanced closer, her intentions unclear. Just then, tape shot out, forcing 𝐾𝐮𝐬 to retreat. 𝗟𝗓 appeared, teasing Izuku about his predicament. 𝗟𝐼𝐬𝐽 joined them, gracefully flipping through the air to land beside them. She attempted to capture 𝐾𝐮𝐬, who dodged with impressive agility. 𝐾𝐮𝐬, now perched on a rock, expressed her disappointment at the situation, hinting at her longing to talk more with Izuku. She smirked, revealing her knowledge of his trust in 𝗟𝐼𝐬𝐽 before making her escape. 𝗟𝗓 attempted to pursue her, but she was already gone. Izuku urged his friends to stay back, concerned for their safety. He explained that the girl they encountered had transformed to resemble 𝗟𝐼𝐬𝐽, raising doubts about her intentions. His classmates reacted with surprise, and 𝗟𝗓, filled with curiosity, shook Izuku, eager to know more about the situation. Izuku reassured them that the girl had been wearing her costume, which eased their worries. As they took cover behind some rocks, 𝗟𝗓 speculated about the girl's quirk, suggesting it allowed her to transform into others. Izuku agreed, noting that their opponents seemed well informed about them, likely due to their previous teamwork during the cavalry battle at the sports festival. 𝗟𝐼𝐬𝐽 expressed understanding, and they quickly shifted focus to their current predicament, realizing they needed to regroup with their classmates. Meanwhile, 𝗏𝗱 found himself hidden behind a pillar in a factory-like area, contemplating his next move. He observed that other students were working in groups, and while he considered attacking, he was wary of potential threats from opponents with quirks that could counter his own. He hoped the other teams would weaken each other before he made his move. Suddenly, Mera's voice crackled through the comms, announcing the increasing number of students who had passed the test. 𝗏𝗱 knew he couldn't afford to wait any longer and sprang into action. Just as he began to run, a ball was thrown at him, but he swiftly countered it with his flames, incinerating the projectile. He spotted students from 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐦 High School who were perched on water towers, ready to confront him. The 𝐒𝐮𝐦 students taunted 𝗏𝗱, impressed by his solo approach but warning him of the odds stacked against him. 𝗏𝗱 acknowledged their presence, ready to engage. As they launched their ball at him, he created an ice wall to deflect their attacks, surprising them with his quick counter. He then froze their legs, leaving them momentarily immobilized. One of the 𝐒𝐮𝐦 students revealed a quirk that allowed him to enlarge objects, throwing a bolt nut at 𝗏𝗱. 𝗏𝗱 quickly acted an ice barrier to block the incoming projectile, realizing the challenge he faced. The 𝐒𝐮𝐦 students continued their assault, but 𝗏𝗱 remained focused, contemplating his next strategy. As the battle escalated, 𝗏𝗱 unleashed his flames, but the 𝐒𝐮𝐦 students countered with mud and water, effectively neutralizing his attacks. 𝗏𝗱 recognized their coordinated efforts and knew he needed a new approach. He used the terrain to his advantage, creating distractions and planning his next move. In a moment of clarity, 𝗏𝗱 devised a plan involving a tank of flammable gas. He created ice to stab into the tank, setting the stage for a decisive strike. As the 𝐒𝐮𝐦 students realized his intentions, 𝗏𝗱 ignited the flames on his arm and unleashed a powerful blast, causing a massive explosion that sent his opponents flying. With the battlefield now in chaos, 𝗏𝗱 prepared to capitalize on the moment, determined to emerge victorious in this challenging test. He then froze them. The red 𝐒𝐮𝐦 student thought about how crazy he was. He noticed that his body was encased in ice. 𝗏𝗱 observed that the commission had managed to reduce the force of the explosion. The red 𝐒𝐮𝐦 student was furious, expressing his anger silently. 𝗏𝗱 apologized, stating that he couldn't afford to fail. He then struck his targets and moved on. 𝗏𝗱 reflected on the simultaneous activation of his left and right abilities, realizing he needed more practice as it slowed him down. Suddenly, his targets glowed blue and emitted a sound, announcing that those who had passed should go to the waiting room and urging them to hurry. This announcement was made to relay information about who had passed and who had failed. The targets recognized the participants and could determine who hit whom based on various factors. They could only be removed with a special magnetic key. Meanwhile, in a nearby building, a student with periwinkle hair set her cup of tea down as a girl with pink hair approached her. The pink-haired girl informed her that 4 students had entered the building. The periwinkle-haired girl opened her left eye to project a video hologram analyzing Momo, Shoji, Tsuyu, and J-ru. She noted their abilities, including arm duplication, sound wave manipulation, and frog-like agility, and recognized Momo's unique quirk. Using her own quirk, mathematical symbols surrounded her as she devised a plan. She smiled, confident in her success, and asked the pink-haired girl to gather everyone. Back in the waiting room, Shoto noticed many students who had passed. As he walked, he overheard Inesa speaking loudly to another student, who seemed uncomfortable. Taking a seat, Shoto thought about Inesa and recalled that if he had applied through recommendations, he should have seen him at the entrance exam. Inesa continued talking, but when he noticed Shoto looking at him, he directed his attention back to the other student, who was confused about the conversation's direction. Mera's voice came through the comms, announcing that more than 52 students had passed, encouraging them to maintain their pace. Meanwhile, Bakugo, Kirishima, and Kaminari were climbing a ladder. Kirishima asked Kaminari why he was following them, to which Kaminari replied that he felt lonely. Bakugo dismissed him, and Kirishima reminded Bakugo to stop being abrasive. Unbeknownst to them, someone was waiting on the platform above. Kirishima noted the number of people up there and suggested they work together, but Bakugo vehemently disagreed. Suddenly, Kirishima noticed a blob of flesh heading toward Bakugo and pushed him out of the way, only to be struck by the flying mass. As Kirishima was carried away, he struggled against it, but he was soon transformed into a blob of flesh himself, landing in the palm of another student. Kaminari was shocked and questioned what had just happened, while Bakugo blamed the student responsible, grinning as he vowed to take action. The student was identified as Senji Shishikura from Shiketsu Academy. Mera's voice returned over the comms, announcing that 8 more students had passed, bringing the total to 60, with 40 more needed to conclude the exam. Meanwhile, 𝐼𝐼𝐬, Uraraka, and Izuku were hiding among the rocks. 𝐼𝐼𝐬 expressed concern about the group's passing, and Izuku noted that they could potentially do something about the nearby group. He recalled a student from Ketsubutsu who had attacked Kami, disguised as Uraraka, and theorized that the student was panicking about failing and trying to score points quickly. Uraraka realized that if the larger groups continued to leave, their numbers would dwindle, putting them at a disadvantage. 𝐼𝐼𝐬 questioned why Izuku had suggested they stay together, and Izuku explained that while they were told to hit targets, it was challenging without knowing the opponent's quirks. He had hoped to restrain enough people for everyone to pass before using the ball. 𝐼𝐼𝐬 acknowledged that if it were merely target practice, the real test was likely about their ability to handle moving targets. Uraraka then heard footsteps approaching and warned the others. As the Ketsubutsu students drew closer, 𝐼𝐼𝐬 sighed, unsure of what to do. Izuku decided to act as a decoy, instructing 𝐼𝐼𝐬 and Uraraka to find openings to restrain as many enemies as possible. 𝐼𝐼𝐬 hesitated, but Uraraka encouraged him to join her. With determination, they prepared to execute their plan, trusting in Izuku's ability to lead. Back with Bakugo, Seiji narrowed his eyes at Bakugo while still holding the transformed Kirishima in his hand, questioning the necessity of wearing their uniform hats during the exam. That's because each and every one of their movements is crowned with the tradition of the name of Shiketsu High School. Seiji released Kirishima and the other captured students, their forms slumping to the ground. He declared that this was a demonstration of power, emphasizing the importance of obligation and dignity in their education, which created a significant gap between them and those he deemed ordinary folk aspiring to be heroes. Bakugo simply smiled, expressing his disdain for Seiji's type. Kaminari, confused, struggled to understand Seiji's words, prompting 𝗏𝐾𝐽 to clarify that 𝐒𝐮𝐩 believed his opponents were beneath him due to his inability to see their true strength. 𝐒𝐮𝐩's anger flared as he insisted that his eyes were handsome and not blind, addressing 𝗏𝐾𝐽 as a rabid dog. Kaminari noted that 𝗏𝐾𝐽 had struck a nerve, urging him to stop. 𝐒𝐮𝐩, regaining his composure, acknowledged you. A high school with respect but criticized their actions, claiming they diminished its dignity. His arms shimmered, transforming into a flesh-like color as they floated ominously. Kaminari warned 𝗏𝐾𝐽 about 𝐒𝐮𝐩's unsettling ability, but 𝗏𝐾𝐽 dismissed him, demanding 𝐒𝐮𝐩 prove his words through action. Meanwhile, Izuku, 𝗟𝗓, and 𝗟𝗏𝐼𝐼 were executing their plan. Izuku, with full cowl activated, focused on drawing their opponents together. Suddenly, he was ambushed by other students, while Ms. Joke offered Aizawa some gum, which he declined, noting the frustration of not knowing the results of the test. Ms. Joke remarked on how Shindo had complicated matters by splitting the ground, leading Aizawa to reflect on the impact of two specific students in Class A, whose presence significantly influenced their peers. As 𝗏𝐾𝐽 prepared to unleash his AP shot move against 𝐒𝐮𝐩's floating fingers, Aizawa observed that despite their differences, the passion of these two students had spread throughout the class. 𝗟𝗓 used his tape to capture students while 𝗟𝗏𝐼𝐼 levitated debris and opponents alike. Izuku skillfully dodged an attack and countered with a powerful kick. Aizawa noted that one of the two influential students was often at the center of major events, and he expressed excitement about what they would accomplish. Momo's team emerged victorious from their confrontation, while Aizawa acknowledged that even those not physically present raised the standard for the entire class. Ms. Joke teased Aizawa about his admiration for the students, but he remained focused on their potential. As chaos erupted, Shindo and his classmates from Ketsubutsu took cover behind rocks, assessing the situation. Shindo summarized their strategy of targeting you to disrupt their coordination, noting that other schools had joined the fray. He recognized that their aggressive approach had led to a chaotic fight, but he remained confident in their plan, likening it to sharpening an axe before chopping down a tree. With a sly smile, Shindo explained that their opponents were panicking and exhausting their stamina while focusing on you. This allowed Shindo and his team to observe from the sidelines, waiting for the right moment to strike. He stood up, asserting that there were no ranks in the struggle for dreams and ideals. Meanwhile, 𝗏𝐾𝐽 and Kaminari faced 𝐒𝐮𝐩, who prepared to launch his floating fingers at them. 𝗏𝐾𝐽 reiterated his challenge, urging 𝐒𝐮𝐩 to demonstrate his strength through action rather than words. 𝗏𝐾𝐽 positioned his hands to charge his AP shot move, focusing his energy. He unleashed a series of mini-explosions that blasted the floating mass of flesh, sending 𝐒𝐮𝐩 tumbling away. 𝗏𝐾𝐽 noted that he had weakened the attack to make it safer for combat against others. Kaminari remarked that everyone seemed to dislike 𝗏𝐾𝐽 for that very reason. As 𝐒𝐮𝐩 struggled to rise, his arms began to reassemble. He reflected on his impulsive reactions, realizing that pride often dictated such behavior. Determined to make 𝗏𝐾𝐽 understand, he decided to demonstrate what it meant to uphold dignity. 𝐒𝐮𝐩 spread his flesh, which began to move toward them. Kaminari questioned 𝐒𝐮𝐩's strange behavior, while 𝗏𝐾𝐽 expressed his annoyance at 𝐒𝐮𝐩's excessive talking. With a fierce determination, 𝗏𝐾𝐽 charged at 𝐒𝐮𝐩, intent on defeating him, despite Kaminari's reminder that this was a test. 𝐒𝐮𝐩 dismissed 𝗏𝐾𝐽's threat, sending his flesh towards him. 𝗏𝐾𝐽 countered with explosions, destroying the advancing mass. Kaminari prepared his support item, frustrated that the fight was stagnant. He fired small projectiles at 𝐒𝐮𝐩, who easily dodged them as they stuck to the wall. 𝐒𝐮𝐩 noted the projectiles and taunted Kaminari, suggesting he would reshape him into something less bothersome. 𝗏𝐾𝐽, refusing to be ignored, fired a concentrated blast at 𝐒𝐮𝐩, who blocked it with a wall of flesh. 𝐒𝐮𝐩 then revealed that 𝗏𝐾𝐽 had left himself vulnerable, and his flesh fingers ensnared 𝗏𝗏𝐽's neck. 𝐒𝐮𝐩 explained that he had strategically positioned a piece of his flesh earlier, and if it made contact, it would be the end for 𝗏𝗏𝐽. Despite 𝗏𝗏𝗏's struggle to break free, he was unable to escape the grip. Kaminari rushed to help, but 𝗏𝗏𝗏 tossed something to him just as the fleshy fingers began to compress him. 𝐒𝐮𝐩 deemed 𝗏𝗏𝗏 pathetic, suggesting he should be remade entirely. Kaminari felt a surge of fear at the sight of Bakugo's predicament. Seiji elaborated on the test's low passing rate and the need to weed out those unfit for heroism, expressing his intent to eliminate them. Kaminari, frustrated, pointed out that Seiji was ignoring the test's purpose. Seiji countered that it was strange for ordinary people to thrive in such a competitive world. He then stepped on Kirishima's flesh ball, indicating that even in this form his friends would feel pain, warning Kaminari that his electricity would harm everyone. Kaminari sighed, feeling overwhelmed by Seiji's insults. Seiji's response was that self-awareness might prompt reflection on his actions. He launched a mass of flesh at Kaminari, who countered by throwing an explosive device that detonated, causing Seiji to leap back in surprise. Realizing it was Bakugo's equipment, Seiji's expression shifted to one of concern. Kaminari, now wearing his shades, prepared to retaliate. He aimed his finger at Seiji, indicating that he had found a perfect opportunity. He unleashed a powerful surge of electricity, causing Seiji to scream in pain while ensuring that the others remained unharmed. Kaminari recalled a moment from his training when he had sought advice from Power Loader and Mei about controlling his quirk. They had provided him with a special device that allowed him to focus his electricity without endangering his allies. As Seiji knelt, overwhelmed by the electric shock, Kaminari felt a surge of determination. He realized that Bakugo's earlier restraint in using his smaller attack was to protect him and Kirishima. With newfound resolve, Kaminari declared that despite Bakugo's rough exterior, he was genuinely striving to be a hero. Throwing the grenade was a result of his calm judgment on how to break the deadlock. Bakugo's body, molded from flesh, began to return to its original form. Kaminari noted that Kirishima was such a good guy that he would rush into enemy territory for his friends, even if it was a reckless decision. Kirishima was also transforming back. Seiji thought to himself that he had lost his grip for a moment. Kaminari pointed out that Seiji had only heard bits and pieces about their opponents, urging him not to insult what he didn't understand. Seiji warned him to be more aware of his position. Suddenly, Kirishima delivered a powerful punch to Seiji's stomach, followed by an explosion from Bakugo that sent Seiji flying and knocked him out. Kirishima remarked that the damage determined how much energy was released, while Bakugo noted that Seiji had only been using long-distance attacks. Kirishima turned to Kaminari with a smile, thanking him for saving them. Bakugo scolded Kaminari for taking too long, and Kaminari retorted that it was no wonder people disliked Bakugo. Kaminari then noticed something happening behind them and alerted Bakugo and Kirishima that they weren't the only ones Seiji had captured. They turned to see others trapped by Seiji's meatball quirk. Bakugo liked his lips, recognizing that they now had targets. Meanwhile, in the waiting room, the number of students had increased to 70. Mera announced over the comms that they were currently at 70 people and that it would be over after another 30. Shoto, sitting in a chair, reflected on the absence of the other students, wondering if their quirks had made things too difficult. He noticed Momo, Shoji, Tsuyu, and 𝐼𝐸 approaching. Momo informed Shoto that he had passed, and Tsuyu expressed that she expected nothing less. Shoto inquired about the others, and 𝐼𝐸 confirmed they had not yet arrived. Shoto noted that he had been the first, followed by the others. Shoji acknowledged that they were still missing some. Momo explained that they had been split up by a quirk used by a student from Ketsubutsu Academy. 𝐼𝐸 remarked on the dwindling number of participants, and Tsuyu hoped everyone else could pass. In another area, Izuku, 𝐼𝐸, and Uraraka were running as the situation intensified. Izuku was sprinting when 𝐼𝐸 caught up with him, asking Izuku to carry him and jump. Izuku complied, lifting 𝐼𝐸 onto his back and leaping into the air while glancing at Uraraka. 𝐼𝐸 instructed Uraraka to release the boulders she had been hiding behind. Uraraka nodded and activated her quirk, causing the floating boulders to crash down on the students pursuing them. The students were caught off guard, and one managed to escape momentarily, only to be captured by 𝐼𝐸. 𝐼𝐸 explained that he had given Uraraka some tape to set traps. Izuku was taken aback by their bold strategy, but Uraraka clarified that she had ensured no one would be hit by the falling debris. They heard Mera's voice again, announcing that 76 people had passed and that they would reach capacity soon. 𝐼𝐻 noted that they didn't have much time and anticipated more attacks. They prepared their ball and approached the trapped students, one of whom attempted to negotiate for a break. Ignoring the plea, Izuku struck their target, stating that he needed to pass too. They hit their targets and moved on. 𝐼𝐻 updated them that they were at 79 people and moving quickly. 𝐼𝐻 was impressed by the rapid response. Their targets announced that those who had passed should go to the anteroom. Izuku wondered about the others. 𝐼𝐻 was in a nearby room, observing the chaos outside and reflecting on the unusual patterns of the battle royale. He noted that 𝐒𝐮𝐬, often heavily targeted, had yet to lose anyone. Meanwhile, 𝐼𝐻 was running through the area, searching for his classmates. He spotted 𝐼𝐻𝐬 hiding behind a large boulder and rushed over to him. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 expressed surprise at 𝐒𝐮𝐻's solitary state, and 𝐒𝐮 explained that he was trying to help Class A as much as possible. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 questioned how 𝐒𝐮𝐻 could know who was still left and what he would do if everyone else had already passed. 𝐒𝐮𝐻 reassured him that finding 𝐼𝐻𝐬 was a positive sign, emphasizing his role as Class A's representative. He expressed his longing to earn his provisional license and asked 𝐼𝐻𝐬 to join him in his search. Back in the waiting room, Kirishima, Bakugo, and Kaminari made their way toward the area as 𝐼𝐻 announced that 3 more people had passed, bringing the total to 82, with 18 spots remaining. Kirishima remarked on the ongoing battles, and Kaminari spotted 𝐼𝐻, Izuku, and 𝗟𝗏𝐻, excitedly calling out to them. 𝗟𝗏𝐻 and 𝐼𝐻 recognized Kaminari, and soon they were all cheering together. Alright. While this was happening, Bakugo was walking towards the anteroom and noticed Izuku. Bakugo acknowledged Izuku's success, expressing his determination not to let it go unchallenged. Izuku felt a mix of emotions, reflecting on how Bakugo had come at him less frequently since their encounter at Kamino. Bakugo remarked on Izuku's newfound power, which surprised him. Izuku recalled a time when he had vowed to defeat Bakugo using his own quirk, feeling a surge of determination. As they entered the anteroom, Momo greeted them, relieved that everyone was safe. Kaminari, slightly annoyed, commented on their speed, while Shoji noted that Todoroki had been the fastest. J.Ru expressed her surprise that Bakugo wasn't already there, attributing it to Kaminari's presence. Tsuyu handed 𝗟𝗏𝐻 a cup of water, reminding her about the targets. Shoto observed that most of their classmates were present, noting the absence of 9 others. Meanwhile, 𝐼𝐻𝐬 and 𝐒𝐮𝐻 were dodging explosions as they navigated the chaotic environment. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 prepared to use his laser, but an enemy appeared, prompting 𝐒𝐮𝐻 to pull him away just in time. They realized that survival was becoming increasingly difficult. 𝐒𝐮𝐻 encouraged 𝐼𝐻𝐬 to keep fighting, but 𝐼𝐻𝐬 felt the weight of their situation. A landmine exploded nearby, forcing them to move quickly. Mineta and his group were hiding behind a boulder, trying to avoid incoming attacks. Aizawa and Ms. Joke monitored the situation, with Ms. Joke celebrating the success of her students. Aizawa noted that time was running out for the remaining participants. Jai returned to the screen, realizing that 9 students from Class A were still unaccounted for. As 𝐒𝐮𝐻 and 𝐼𝐻𝐬 continued to run, 𝐼𝐻𝐬 reflected on his longing to be equal to his peers. He suddenly stopped, pulling away from 𝐒𝐮𝐻 and preparing to use his support item. 𝐒𝐮𝐻 was confused by 𝐼𝐻𝐬's actions, but 𝐼𝐻𝐬 insisted he needed to stand out to help them both. He urged 𝐒𝐮𝐻 to get ready as they prepared for the incoming students. Just then, a flock of birds appeared, causing chaos among their opponents. 𝐒𝐮𝐻 recognized Koda's quirk at work, as Koda commanded the birds to circle the area. Tokoyami decided to join the fight, using his dark shadow to gain an advantage. Mineta contributed by throwing sticky ball, while Ojiro attacked with his tail. The atmosphere shifted as their classmates rallied together. Toru jumped down, using her quirk to create a blinding flash of light, allowing her to strike a target. Ojiro followed suit, and 𝐼𝐻 announced that more students had passed, indicating the urgency of their situation. Mina explained that the chaos had led to confusion among both friends and foes, but they had managed to regroup thanks to 𝐼𝐻𝐬's laser. As 𝐼𝐻𝐬 watched his classmates successfully hit their targets, he felt a renewed sense of hope and determination. Mina struck a student with a werewolf quirk. 𝗟𝐼 announced that there were 7 left. 𝗏𝐼𝐬 held another student in Dark Shadow's grip while using his other hand to throw the ball. He expressed his apologies as they successfully hit their target. 𝗟𝐼 then declared that there were 6 left. Mayonetta, looking exhausted from his efforts, slowly approached another trapped student and hit his target. 𝗟𝐼 counted down, stating there were 5 left, and noted how 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐦𝐸 was pulling together impressive combinations in the final minutes. Aizawa thought to himself, surprised by the number of students still in the game. Kota approached another trapped student and successfully hit his target, exclaiming his victory. 𝗟𝐼 continued, announcing there were 4 left. Sato found another trapped student and struck his target, celebrating with enthusiasm. 𝗟𝐼 counted down again, stating there were 3 left. Meanwhile, Cammy hit the target of another knocked-out student. 𝗟𝐼 reported that they had just eliminated one from Shiketsu High, leaving 2 left. Aoyama and Ida raced toward the remaining trapped students, ball in hand. Ida expressed his confusion about Aoyama's intentions, but they both struck their targets just in time, with Ida thanking Aoyama for his help. An alarm rang, and 𝗟𝐼 raised his hands in excitement, announcing that all spots were filled and the test had concluded. The members of Class 1A celebrated their success, with Kaminari and Kirishima raising their hands in triumph. Uraraka cheered that everyone in 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐦𝐸 had passed the first test, while 𝗟𝗧 praised their clutch performance at the end. Tsuyu croaked in agreement, and Izuku, Shoji, and Momo sighed in relief. 𝗟𝐼's voice came through the comms, informing everyone that those who failed would need to withdraw. Aizawa expressed his nervousness about the students' performance, reminding them that more training awaited them upon their return. Ms. Joke laughed, teasing Aizawa about his apparent happiness, but he insisted he was not. In the waiting room, Inesa confronted his classmate Nagamasa Mora, who informed him that one of their classmates had failed. Inesa was shocked to learn that Shishikura had not passed, and Nagamasa explained that it was due to a reckless decision made during the test. Cammy sighed, appearing indifferent. 𝗟𝐼 spoke again through the comms, instructing the 100 students who passed to watch the screen. The camera zoomed in on a building in the field, and Izuku recognized it as the field they had just been in. Uraraka wondered what would happen next, and suddenly, there was an explosion. Other buildings followed suit, creating a chaotic scene that left everyone stunned. 𝗟𝐼 announced that the next test would involve rescue exercises in the disaster zone. Izuku realized the significance of the situation, while Kaminari and Mayonetta misheard the term bystanders as bysliders. Toru corrected them, explaining that bystanders were people present at the scene, and Momo added that it could also refer to ordinary citizens. 𝗟𝐼 continued, explaining that those who passed the first test would be evaluated on their rescue procedures. The disaster site resembled the Kamino incident, prompting Izuku to reflect on their previous experiences. Shoji noticed injured individuals in the rubble, and Sato gasped upon realizing that elderly people and children were among them. Mayonetta expressed concern about the danger. 𝗟𝐼 introduced the Help Us Company, a group of trained professionals posing as victims in need of rescue. 𝗟𝗧 commented on the unique job opportunities available in a world where heroes were celebrated. 𝗟𝐼 explained that the HC members would be evaluated based on the students' rescue efforts, with points awarded for successful actions. As the countdown began, Ida approached Izuku, contemplating the similarities between the current disaster and the Kamino incident. They resolved to do their best. Meanwhile, 𝗟𝗧 approached Kaminari and Mayonetta, excitedly sharing a rumor about Cammy. Mayonetta's interest piqued, and he eagerly listened as 𝗟𝗧 recounted a story that involved Izuku and Cammy. Suddenly, Mayonetta and Kaminari confronted Izuku, demanding to know what he had been doing. Izuku was bewildered by their accusations, insisting he had done nothing wrong. Mayonetta pointed at Cammy, who was watching them with confusion, and the trio fell silent as she waved at Izuku, causing Mayonetta to become increasingly frustrated. That's a greeting exchanged secretly by a man and a woman after they've progressed to a certain point in their relationship. Izuku was doing his best to block the two as they were about to confront him. Kaminari expressed his disbelief, accusing Izuku of being a smooth talker and questioning how far he had gone with her. Izuku quickly realized that 𝗟𝗏 had been the one to spill the details. He managed to stop them from attacking and began to explain himself, insisting that it was all due to her quirk and how intimidating she had been when he was clueless about the situation. Kaminari pressed on, suggesting that Izuku had seen her in a compromising state. Izuku hesitated, caught off guard by the implication. Mineta pointed out that Kami was still waving at Izuku, which only fueled their teasing. Kaminari shook Izuku by the collar, demanding to know just how far things had gone. Izuku reiterated that it wasn't what they thought. 𝗟𝗏𝐽 watched the scene unfold with a blank expression, while Kirishima noticed students from Shiketsu approaching. Nagamasa greeted Bakugo, who responded curtly. Nagamasa mentioned a classmate with the power of flesh molding, and Bakugo recalled knocking him out. Nagamasa apologized on behalf of his classmate, explaining that he had a tendency to impose his values on others, especially since Bakugo and Izuku were well-known figures. Mineta felt uneasy at the mention of a good relationship, and Izuku agreed that it didn't seem that way at all. Shoto observed the interaction quietly, contemplating the implications of Nagamasa's words. As the Shiketsu students prepared to leave, Shoto called out to Inasa, who turned with a glare reminiscent of their earlier encounter. Inasa acknowledged Shoto but expressed his lingering resentment, noting that while Shoto had changed, he still bore his father's resemblance. This revelation left Shoto momentarily stunned. Izuku approached Shoto, concerned for his friend, but was startled when Kami appeared behind him, casually saying goodbye. Mineta and Kaminari immediately jumped to conclusions, accusing Izuku of being a maniac. Izuku defended himself, insisting that Kami was actually quite intimidating. Momo intervened, scolding the group for their behavior and reminding them that they had another test to focus on. Meanwhile, 𝗟𝗏𝐽 watched Kami walk away, feeling a mix of emotions that unsettled her. Just as she was about to approach Izuku, an alarm rang out, alerting everyone to a large-scale attack by villains in the city, resulting in numerous injuries. Tsuyu recognized it as part of their exercise scenario, and J.Ru realized the implications. The room began to open up, signaling the start of their mission. Mera announced that due to damaged roads, rescue workers would be delayed, and it was up to the heroes in the area to lead the rescue efforts. Determined, Izuku resolved to take the situation seriously. As the students rushed out to help the injured, Ida emphasized the importance of teamwork. Bakugo, however, went off on his own, prompting concern from his classmates. Mera instructed them to wrap up the second test quickly, while Aizawa and 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 observed. Tsuyu and Ojiro were on the lookout for anyone in need of assistance, cautioning each other about falling debris. Izuku suddenly heard a child's voice crying out for help. When Ida inquired about it, Izuku pointed out the source of the sound, leading them through the rubble to find a boy with BLD on his face. The boy pleaded for help, mentioning that his grandfather had been trapped. Izuku rushed to assist, but the boy challenged him, pointing out that he needed to assess the situation first. Izuku realized that the members of 𝐻C would be the ones evaluating their performance during the exercise, and the boy continued to explain the importance of being aware of their surroundings and the conditions of those in need. They took the boy's advice to heart, looking around attentively. They observed several other students performing their tasks effectively. One student suggested temporarily marking the area as dangerous, but his classmate urged him to take a more aggressive approach, emphasizing the severity of the situation. Nearby, students from Shiketsu were gathered around a collapsed building while Nagamasa moved a few feet away. Nagamasa decided to create a path and a helicopter landing zone. He extended the hair on his body, using it to clear away debris. In just a few moments, he had made enough space for the helicopter to land. Inasa praised Nagamasa for his impressive abilities, while Shindo and his classmates busily set up a first aid station. Shindo announced his intention to establish the station, and Shiki suggested setting up a temporary evacuation area due to the ample space available. Tatame took charge of triage. Aizawa and 𝐒𝐿 observed the students as they worked diligently. Aizawa noted that experience plays a crucial role in saving lives. As the students finished assessing the situation, one boy explained the importance of providing rescue and aid until the firefighters and police arrived, emphasizing the need to maintain authority and ensure a smooth transition for the professionals. He acknowledged the fear and worry everyone was feeling, reminding them that they needed to stay strong and supportive. Izuku reflected on how All Might had a calming presence that reassured people. He reminded himself to focus, realizing he needed to channel his energy into the task at hand. He understood that the provisional license and this test were stepping stones toward his dream of becoming a hero. With determination, he smiled at the boy who was upset. The boy, still distressed, cried out for his grandfather. Izuku assured him that they would save him and took charge, instructing his classmates to move ahead while he carried the boy to the first aid area. His classmates rallied together, ready to assist. 𝗟𝗏, observing Izuku, found herself lost in thought. She recalled Aoyama's question about her feelings for him and Mina's playful comments about love. 𝗟𝗏 resolved to push her feelings aside for now, inspired by Izuku's dedication to his goals. She decided to focus on her own efforts, promising to deal with her emotions when the time was right. Meanwhile, Mera monitored the situation from the bleachers, noting that everyone was performing well due to their training. However, he sensed that challenges lay ahead, especially with the presence of Gang Orca and his team moving through the halls. In another part of the scene, Inesa and his classmates discovered two individuals trapped in rubble but not in immediate danger. Inesa introduced himself as a first-year student and expressed his enthusiasm for rescue exercises, assuring the individuals that they would be safe with him. He used his quirk to manipulate the air and lift the two 𝐻C members. Nagamasa watched with concern as Inesa worked. One of the 𝐻C members, dressed in a baby costume, observed Inesa's technique, initially impressed by the variety of winds he used. However, their expression shifted to disapproval, criticizing Inesa's approach as sloppy. Nagamasa cautioned Inesa against moving anyone without proper safety checks, emphasizing the importance of assessing the injured's condition. Inesa acknowledged his mistake, and as he gently set the two individuals down, his classmate Seiji observed from a distance. Seiji noted that the initial response to emergencies revealed the extent of training and decision-making skills. He recognized Inesa's impatience and lack of experience. Seiji's teacher, surprised by his critical assessment, encouraged him to reflect on his own performance, suggesting that he had been influenced by external factors. Seiji dismissed the notion that he could be swayed by a villain's words, but his teacher pointed out the growing longing for reform in the hero community, warning that negativity could cloud judgment. Meanwhile, two students from another school discovered someone trapped and tried to elicit a response, but their calls went unanswered. It was too dark to see what was happening. A voice called out to confirm a pulse and breathing. Another person began pushing rocks aside to create space for emergency treatment. 𝗟𝗏 was taken aback by how accustomed the second-year students from other schools were to this kind of situation. They moved quickly, with Momo near a collapsed building. She noticed an old man who was conscious and in pain, urging them to hurry. 𝗟𝗏 rushed over, hands outstretched, ready to make the debris float and move it out of the way. The old man thought to himself that 𝗟𝗏's decision might cost her points. Momo asked 𝗟𝗏 to wait, explaining the precarious balance of the debris around them. If they moved anything carelessly, it could lead to further danger. 𝗟𝗏 realized the risk and watched as Momo began to create a support structure to prop up the wall before they could evacuate the old man. 𝗟𝗏 and Sato approached, eager to help. They quickly set up pillars and taped them together, reinforcing the wall. Momo encouraged 𝗟𝗏 to proceed, and 𝗟𝗏 carefully moved debris that wouldn't disturb the balance, passing it to Sato and the others while the old man observed their teamwork. He reflected on the importance of efficiency during a large-scale disaster, noting that understanding one's own abilities and collaborating with others was crucial for success. Meanwhile, Mineta, Shoji, and Ida were watching instead of helping. Mineta lamented their inaction, while Shoji suggested splitting into smaller groups for better efficiency. Tsuyu decided to head toward the rivers, where her abilities would be most useful, and Shoto and Toru joined her. Ojiro and Mina agreed to go as well, while Kodo was asked if he could use animals to search for people in need. Shoji volunteered to help, and Mineta agreed to assist him. Ida emphasized the importance of communicating with other schools to save as many lives as possible. 𝐒𝐮𝐬, determined to help, illuminated the area with his laser to provide light for those in need. 𝗟𝗟𝐼𝐜 approached 𝗟𝗧𝗟, carrying an injured man, and informed him that the man's leg was broken. 𝗟𝗧𝗟 assured her he would handle it. Momo turned to 𝗟𝗟, who was using her quirk to listen for cries for help, and asked her to find the next person in need. In another area, Bakugo, Kirishima, and Kaminari were navigating the site when they heard screams. They found two 𝐻C members with scrapes and bruises. The female member complained of an injured arm, while the male member pleaded for help. Bakugo, frustrated, told them to save themselves, shocking them both. Kaminari and Kirishima urged Bakugo to reconsider, noting that the 𝐻C members might be seriously hurt. As they tried to convince him to help, the female member mentioned their low priority status for rescue. The male member speculated whether Bakugo had figured out their situation. Meanwhile, Shoji used his quirk to listen for cries for help and directed Ida to check on those in need. Ida took off running, determined to save those who required assistance, thinking of his brother, Tensei. Ojiro and the others decided to head toward the mountain zone, where Kota could use his abilities more effectively. Toru spotted a child in distress in the river and alerted Tsuyu and Shoto. Tsuyu jumped into the water to help, while Shoto and Toru rushed toward the child, gathering materials to keep him warm. Izuku was carrying the boy, nearing the first aid area, and reassured him that they were almost safe. Upon reaching the area, Izuku was struck by the number of injured people present. A girl assisting the wounded approached him, asking to see the boy. Izuku explained the boy's injuries, and she assessed him before instructing Izuku to carry him to a designated area. The boy smiled, feeling a sense of relief as he saw Izuku taking charge. While this was happening, 𝐼𝐻 and his men were close to the area. He instructed his team to screen the injured and perform first aid. In the brief time until emergency responders arrived, heroes needed to act in their stead and ensure a smooth transition after their arrival. He pressed a button on his ear to call Mera. He asked how things were going. Mera reported that during the initial response, many acted incompetently, but the points deducted by the members of 𝐻C were less than she expected. Overall, she believed everything was going okay. 𝐼𝐻 ended the call, knowing that to protect the people on the streets, heroes had to multitask, rescue and fight. Suddenly, a loud explosion echoed nearby, causing everyone at the first aid station to look up in alarm. Izuku questioned what was happening, while Bakugo and his friends reacted with confusion. Shoto, carrying a boy, felt the impact of the blast and wondered if it was an explosion. 𝗟𝗟𝐼𝐜 and the others were equally startled, with 𝗟𝗟𝐼𝐜 stammering in disbelief. Mera informed them that there had been a large-scale terrorist attack by villains. Izuku realized that this was part of the scenario for their exercises, prompting disbelief from Shindo and others. As the smoke billowed, Izuku's eyes widened when he spotted 𝐼𝐻 and his men. 𝐼𝐻 called for rescue and combat, urging the students to act decisively. He challenged them, asking if they could do everything at once. Mera observed the chaos unfold, recalling that during the League of Villains operation in Kamino Ward, 𝐼𝐻 had fought alongside 𝗟𝗏HR and Best Jeanist, proving his strength and ranking. With a signal, 𝐼𝐻's men rushed into action. Mera communicated that villains had appeared and begun their pursuit. Hero candidates at the scene were instructed to continue their rescue efforts while also suppressing the villains. Ida expressed disbelief at the expectation to continue rescuing while fighting, and Mineta voiced his frustration at the overwhelming demands placed on them. Aizawa and 𝐒𝐻𝐽 watched the scene unfold, with Aizawa noting the difficulty of the situation, even for professionals. Izuku felt a sense of urgency for the injured as 𝐼𝐻 posed a critical question about their next steps, whether to fight or protect, help or run. Meanwhile, at the mountain zone, Tokoyami and his friends heard the explosion near the first aid area. Ojiro recognized the threat of villains attacking, and they all rushed to see the damage. Tsuyu and Shoto noted the need to rescue the remaining people while being aware of the unfolding situation. Mera monitored the students' progress, reflecting on the evaluation criteria for the second test. Each examinee started with a certain number of points, which were deducted based on their actions. The Public Safety Commission had 100 employees scoring each candidate individually. 𝐼𝐻 observed a score drop to 50, indicating failure, and urged the students to make the right decisions. As 𝐾𝐭𝐚𝐲𝐿 men continued toward the first aid area, Izuku prepared to activate his full cowl when 𝐮𝐲 rushed past him, calling for everyone to get to safety. Izuku recognized 𝐮𝐲's determination and knew they had to act quickly. Get them as far away from the villains as possible. Izuku nodded in agreement, ready to follow 𝐮𝐲's lead. 𝐮𝐲 placed his hands on the ground, determined to create tremors at 1-second intervals. His palms glowed with energy as the earth shook, preventing the advancing army from getting closer. He was resolute in his mission to keep them at bay. Suddenly, 𝐾𝐭𝐚𝐲𝐿 appeared before 𝐮𝐲, declaring that it wasn't enough. He unleashed an ultrasonic wave aimed directly at 𝐮𝐲, causing him to stagger back. Izuku called out to 𝐮𝐲, worried for his friend. 𝐾𝐭𝐚𝐲𝐿 taunted them, pointing out the disparity in their abilities. As Izuku gritted his teeth, he noticed 𝐾𝐭𝐚𝐲𝐿 approaching him. He quickly turned to his left, dodging an icy attack that originated from 𝗪𝗱. Izuku shouted out 𝗪𝗱's name as he saw 𝗪𝐻𝐻 and the others rushing to join them. 𝗪𝐻𝐻 asked if Izuku was evacuating and offered their help, while Mina marveled at 𝗪𝗱's speed. Izuku questioned their whereabouts, and 𝗪𝐻𝐻 explained that they had been by the water, helping where they were needed most. After apprehending some villains, 𝗪𝗱 launched another ice wall at 𝐾𝐭𝐚𝐲𝐿, who effortlessly shattered it with another ultrasonic wave. 𝗪𝗱 sighed, acknowledging 𝐾𝐭𝐚𝐲𝐿's prowess as a top hero. Just then, he felt a gust of wind and spotted 𝐼𝐻𝐻 descending from the air. 𝐼𝐻𝐻 declared that he would blow the villains away, using his quirk to break 𝗪𝗱's ice and send some of 𝐾𝐭𝐚𝐲𝐿's men flying. 𝗪𝗱 and 𝐼𝐻𝐻 exchanged glances, and Izuku recognized 𝐼𝐻𝐻 as the student who had turned down you. 𝗪𝗻𝐻 suggested they continue evacuating now that stronger allies had arrived, and Mina agreed. Meanwhile, members of the Public Safety Commission observed the situation, praising the strategic prioritization of the first aid station. 𝐼𝐻𝐻 looked down at 𝗪𝗱, recalling their past encounters. 𝗪𝗱 remembered 𝐼𝐻𝐻's words about not being able to help while harboring resentment. He thought to himself that everything 𝐼𝐻𝐻 said was merely a distraction and suggested that 𝐼𝐻𝐻 assist with the evacuation instead. 𝐼𝐻𝐻 remained still, gathering air as 𝗪𝗱 prepared to attack. 𝐾𝐭𝐚𝐲𝐿 sensed their impending confrontation. The two heroes unleashed their attacks, but 𝗪𝗱's flames failed to reach 𝐾𝐭𝐚𝐲𝐿. 𝐼𝐻𝐻 expressed frustration, blaming 𝗪𝗱 for using flames that caused the wind to rise. 𝗪𝗱 countered, insisting that 𝐻𝐻𝐻 had intentionally interfered with his flames. Their argument bewildered 𝐾𝐭𝐚𝐲𝐿 and his men, who were confused by the bickering amidst the chaos. 𝗍𝐻𝐻 accused 𝗪𝗱 of trying to steal his glory, while 𝗪𝗱 vehemently denied any such intention. 𝗍𝗻Ⅎ's thoughts drifted back to a time when he witnessed 𝗟𝗏r defeat a villain, recalling how heroes should embody passion and hope. He remembered trying to get 𝗟𝗏r's autograph, only to be dismissed. 𝗍𝗏's conviction grew stronger as he reflected on 𝗪𝗱's resemblance to his father. 𝗪𝗱, feeling annoyed and trapped by the cement hardening around him, tried to focus on the battle. He reminded himself that he was not the same as 𝗟𝗏r and needed to concentrate on the task at hand. However, images of flames and 𝗟𝗏r's mask flickered in his mind, reminding him of his lingering feelings of resentment. 𝐾𝐭𝐚𝐲𝐿, observing the chaos, questioned why they were arguing when a villain was right in front of them. 𝗟𝗏, watching from a distance, noted the tension between the two heroes. 𝗍𝗏 declared that he would never accept 𝗪𝗱's father as a hero, while 𝗪𝗱 struggled to maintain his focus. The two heroes fired their attacks again, only for them to be repelled. 𝗍𝗏 expressed disbelief at their repeated failures, and 𝗪𝗱 realized that the flames were heading toward 𝗮𝐻𝐻, who had just regained consciousness. In a moment of desperation, Izuku rushed to save 𝗮𝗻Ⅎ, leaping into the air just before the flames could reach him. They landed safely away from the chaos, while a pro hero commented on the surprising behavior of the top students. 𝗪𝗱, still processing the situation, recalled 𝗍𝗏's earlier interference and recognized him as a significant obstacle from his past. He couldn't understand why he hadn't remembered him sooner, realizing that his loud and brash demeanor had overshadowed their earlier encounters. Shoto couldn't think of anything else as he recalled what he had told his father after his match with Izuku in the sports festival. He had forgotten about him. Whether that was a good thing or a bad thing, he let it go without knowing for sure. Was this where it all came back? His past and his BLD. The fire on his left arm was still lit. He realized he couldn't just bury it and forget about it. As he turned around, his eyes widened when he saw 𝐼𝐻𝐬 trying to reach for him. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 declared he would take care of the wind that was in the way. Inesa attempted to move away, but one of 𝐼𝐻𝐬's men shot cement at him, knocking him back and hitting him with an ultrasonic wave that made him cry out. The soldiers coordinated their efforts, declaring it was a teamwork play between them and their boss, while one of them boasted about hardening all the examinees. Inesa fell to the ground, feeling his control slipping away. Shoto called out to him, but he was cut off as 𝐼𝐻𝐬 grabbed him by the neck, stating that one reaps what one sows. The 𝐼𝐻𝐬 fired an ultrasonic wave in front of Shoto, paralyzing him while Inesa crashed to the ground. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 noted that the distance had lessened the effectiveness of his attack. His men rushed toward the first aid station, eager to cause more chaos. Shoto gritted his teeth in pain, while Inesa felt the same frustration. They both recalled Izuku's words, realizing they had become what they had once hated. They understood that their past actions had led to this situation and that they needed to fix it. Mina looked back to see the army of men approaching and warned everyone that they were coming their way. Izuku carefully set Shindo down and stepped forward, recognizing the urgency of the situation. Shindo slowly got up, activating his quirk to break the ground apart. Izuku expressed surprise at Shindo's ability to move despite the ultrasonic waves. Shindo explained that he had built up a tolerance to sound waves and vibrations due to his quirk. He was frustrated that his initial surprise attack had been ruined by the first years. As Shindo looked at the approaching army, he declared that he had stopped them and urged everyone to split up and get the injured to safety. Izuku activated his full cowl and prepared to assist. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 released Shoto, who dropped face-first onto the ground, feeling the weight of their lack of teamwork. Inesa felt the same way, and as Shoto's left side burst into flames, he realized they needed to work together. Inesa struggled to control the air around him, attempting to lift Shoto's fire from below. Together, they combined their powers of fire and wind to trap 𝐼𝐻𝐬. The heat of their attack reached 𝐼𝐻𝐬, who stood his ground, surprised but impressed by their determination. He noted that even though his opponents were struggling, they were trying to make up for their earlier mistakes. 𝐼𝐻𝐬's men, recovering from Shindo's vibrations, saw their boss trapped and panicked. They attempted to fire their cement guns, but Shoto created a wall of ice to protect himself. He realized he needed to practice the simultaneous activation of his quirks, as it slowed him down. Meanwhile, the soldiers began to reconsider their plans. Izuku rushed in, determined to defeat the villains. The army panicked and began shooting their guns. 𝐻𝐬 swooped in from above, grabbing one soldier's arm and turning him against his comrades. As he landed beside Izuku, 𝐻𝐬 reported that all the injured had been evacuated and reinforcements would arrive soon. Mera monitored the situation through his laptop, noting that the remaining 𝐻𝐶E members were being carried to safety. He relaxed, hoping to finally get some rest after the chaos. Mina and Tokoyami joined the fight, taking out soldiers with their quirks. Tsuyu appeared, having polished her skills to reach a new level of combat effectiveness, surprising her friends with her camouflage ability. 𝐻𝐬 quickly turned around, only to see two soldiers approaching him. Fortunately, the timely arrival of Shiketsu's student Nagamasa Mora prevented 𝐻𝐬 from being tackled to the ground. 𝐻𝐬 recognized him as a student from Shiketsu High School. Nagamasa extended his hair, capturing the soldiers in the vicinity. He expressed his disappointment that Inesa had not followed instructions, stating that it was a disgrace to the Shiketsu name as there should be no enemies left. Using his quirk, Nagamasa began to unleash a flurry of attacks on the soldiers. 𝐻𝐬 noted the strength of Nagamasa's quirk, while Tsuyu agreed with a simple acknowledgement. Tokoyami rushed by, eager to join the fray. Meanwhile, 𝐾𝐭𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐬 remained trapped in a swirling inferno. However, this did not faze him. He mused about the effectiveness of the hot wind prison, noting that a typical villain would have given up, but he was not typical. He splashed water on his head, contemplating his next move. Shoto and Inesa gritted their teeth as 𝐾𝐭𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐬 unleashed an ultrasonic wave, dispersing the fiery whirlwind. Steam rose from his head as he challenged his opponents, asking what their next move would be. Shoto felt a sense of despair, thinking he had nothing left to offer. Just then, Izuku descended from the sky, delivering a kick to 𝐾𝐭𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐬, who blocked the attack with his gear. 𝐾𝐭𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐬 recognized Izuku as the soon-to-be youngest hero. Izuku landed near Shoto, who looked at his friend with admiration for his selflessness. Izuku prepared to unleash a Delaware smash on 𝐾𝐭𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐬, who was readying another ultrasonic wave. Before they could clash, Mera's voice interrupted through the communication system, announcing that all HQ members deployed had been rescued from the danger zone. Kaminari was surprised to hear this, and Kirishima realized they had played a part in it. Mera explained that all provisional licensing exam procedures had been completed. Izuku lowered his arm in disbelief, realizing they were done. Mera continued, stating that after tallying the scores, results would be announced, and those injured should head to the infirmary while the others changed and stood by. 𝐾𝐭𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐬's men approached him, apologizing for their failure to perform their duties. 𝐾𝐭𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐬 reassured them that despite the challenges, their efforts were commendable. He reflected on how the test could have turned out differently if it had continued longer. Time passed, and everyone who participated in the exam gathered in front of Mera, who stood on a stage with a large screen that was off. Mera thanked everyone for their hard work and explained the scoring system. He mentioned a twofold demerit system used to evaluate their performance during the crisis. The names of those who passed would be displayed in syllabary order, and he urged everyone to check the list carefully. When the screen turned on, revealing the names of those who had passed, adrenaline surged through the participants. Izuku searched for his name, gasping when he found it. He felt a rush of excitement, thinking of All Might. Others around him also celebrated their successes, with Mineta, 𝐼𝐻𝐸, Shoji, Uraraka, 𝐼𝐻𝐸, Tokoyami, Aoyama, Sato, Mina, Koda, Momo, Tsuyu, Toru, Kaminari, and Kirishima all expressing their relief and joy at passing. However, Bakuga's expression was one of anger, and Inesa lamented his own failure. Shoto remained silent, not seeing his name on the list, which concerned Izuku. Inesa approached Shoto, apologizing profusely for his failure to help him pass. Shoto reflected on his journey and reassured Inesa that he had learned valuable lessons from their confrontation. Mina and 𝐼𝐻𝐸 expressed their surprise at Shoto's failure, while Kaminari advised Bakuga to reconsider his harsh words. Bakuga shot him a fierce glare, asserting his frustration. Mineta smugly commented on the class hierarchy, but Ida quickly silenced him. Izuku felt concern for Shoto, wondering how he was coping with the news. Mera announced that results would be distributed, detailing each participant's scores. Men in suits began handing out the results. Kirishima thanked the staff for his score, while Bakuga demanded to see Kirishima's results. Mera explained the cutoff score and the demerit system, prompting Ojiro to express his relief at barely passing. 𝐼𝐻𝐸 celebrated his score, while Ojiro was shocked by Momo's impressive results. Izuku approached Ida to discuss their scores, revealing that he had received 71 points. While Ida had scored, they both appreciated the feedback for improvement. Izuku pondered the implications of the demerit system and why some had been allowed to remain until the end despite their scores. Mera clarified that those who passed would have the authority to act like pro-heroes during emergencies, emphasizing the responsibility that came with such power. He reminded them of the importance of their actions in society, especially in light of All Might's diminished abilities, which had previously played a significant role in crime suppression. With him gone, villains have begun to appear. The balance will be destroyed, and as the world changes greatly, the young people will someday become the center of society. Next, they must become exemplary heroes, great enough to suppress crime themselves. This time, all of them have received their provisional licenses to perform professional activities. They should think of themselves as fledglings and be even more diligent in their work studies at their respective schools. For those who did not pass, there is still a chance left. After a 3-month-long special course and passing an individual test, provisional licenses will be issued to them as well. Bakugo made a sound of annoyance at this news. Mera continued, explaining that to deal with the future she just spoke of, they need as many good heroes as possible. The first test was to weed people out, but they want to grow the 100 selected in that test as much as possible. They watched everyone until the end and realized that it wasn't that they lacked promise. Rather, once their inadequacies are corrected, they all have the potential to be even greater than those who passed. It will keep them busy doing this alongside their studies, and they may also choose to retake the exam in April instead. Bakugo was eager for the opportunity, and 𝐼𝐻 expressed his excitement as well. Izuku shared his enthusiasm with Todoroki, while Mineta suggested they take it easy. Iida interrupted Mineta to focus on their studies, and Izuku encouraged Shoto to join them soon. Outside the building, Izuku held his provisional hero license in his hands, tears nearly spilling from his eyes. He felt a wave of joy, realizing how far he had come and how many people had helped him along the way. He quickly pulled out his phone, eager to share the news with his mom and All Might, prompting a giggle from 𝗟𝗏𝐼𝐻. Ms. Joke approached Aizawa, suggesting they do some joint practice. Aizawa agreed, and as she played with her hair, she brought up the topic of a date. After some hesitation, Aizawa admitted he had thought about it and agreed to go on one date, recalling a crush he had kept hidden. Ms. Joke was overjoyed and suggested a cat cafe for their date, which Aizawa reluctantly accepted, setting a date for Saturday. Meanwhile, 𝐼𝐻 rushed over to the bus, passing by the Class 1A group. He greeted them enthusiastically, and Tsuyu noted that Shiketsu was present. 𝐼𝐻 acknowledged Todoroki, expressing his intent to see him at the special course while also playfully stating he still disliked him. Kirishima found the exchange confusing, while Shoto resolved to make the best of it. As Momo conversed with Jiraiya, a voice called out to her, recognizing her from their joint training. Momo turned to see a girl with light baby blue hair and gray eyes, who introduced herself as Kashiko Sekigai from Isamu Academy. Kashiko mentioned that she and her friends were surprised to see Momo there as well. 𝗟𝗏𝐼𝐻 pointed out that Tsuyu was back with her best friend, prompting Izuku to notice the girl with a unique appearance. Tsuyu and her friend, Habuko, greeted each other warmly. However, Mineta's excitement turned to fear as he sensed a tense atmosphere. He realized that Bakugo and Isamu's student Romero Fujimi were nearby. Fujimi taunted Bakugo about 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐦𝐸's reputation and his licensing test failure, while Bakugo retorted about Fujimi's past actions. The two exchanged heated words, escalating to a confrontation. Just as they were about to clash, they were interrupted by Iida and Kashiko, who urged them to stop the pointless argument. While the class representatives tried to calm their classmates, Izuku noticed Nagamasa walking toward the same bus 𝐼𝐻 had boarded. He approached Nagamasa, eager to learn about the training to mask one's presence. Nagamasa explained that they hadn't learned anything like that, and when Izuku mentioned a girl with big lips and a bodysuit, Nagamasa clarified that she had taken a taxi to the station, not feeling well. Izuku noted that she had been acting strangely for the past few days, leaving him curious about what might be going on. She was all cheery and talked in the popular way. Meanwhile, in an alleyway, Cammy was walking down, and suddenly, a strange substance began to peel off her, just like when she transformed into 𝗟𝗏𝐼𝐻. Nagamasa observed the change, noting that now she was quiet and unresponsive to their instructions. The goop fully came off, revealing the person to be none other than Himiko Toga. Her phone rang and she answered it. Mr. Compress was on the line, asking where she was and what she was doing. Toga excitedly shared that she had been having the most wonderful fun. Mr. Compress reminded her not to slack off on her regular check-ins, warning that if one of them got caught, they would all be in danger. Toga reassured him that she hadn't been caught and that Tamura would be thrilled because she had obtained some of Izuku's BLD. Toga's quirk, transform, allowed her to take on the appearance of anyone whose BLD she digested. She inquired if Tamura had made a decision regarding the Yakuza group and overhaul, who had harmed Big Sis Mag. Mr. Compress sighed, stating that 𝗏𝗼𝐼𝐻 was still contemplating the situation and expressed a longing for revenge. Toga agreed, teasing him about missing the tricks he could do with both arms, to which he replied that he could still perform tricks, even with just one arm. Meanwhile, at Heights Alliance, Mina lamented that even after completing their licensing exam, they still had classes the next day. Kirishima commented that there was no rest for a hero. Izuku was reading a congratulatory message from his mother and All Might about passing the exam when Bakugo approached him, requesting that they talk about Izuku's quirk. 2 hours later, everyone was fast asleep except for Izuku and Bakugo, who decided to go outside. Izuku expressed concern about wandering around at night, but Bakugo remained silent, lost in memories of their childhood. They walked until they reached 𝐼𝐻𝐽, the site of their first combat trial. Izuku recognized the location, and Bakugo recalled how he had fought and lost to Izuku there, feeling sick about it. Bakugo questioned how Izuku had gained admission to you, despite being quirkless, and how he had obtained a quirk. Izuku explained that his quirk was something he received from someone else, vowing to make it his own one day. Bakugo reflected on how he had felt about Izuku's rise in popularity after their encounters with villains and how he had failed his provisional license exam. Izuku attempted to clarify that it wasn't about ability or popularity, but Bakugo interrupted, insisting that he had always found Izuku infuriating. However, he admitted that the experience in Kamino had helped him understand things better. He then confronted Izuku about his power, suspecting it came from All Might. Izuku felt a lump in his throat as Bakugo pressed for answers, recalling the connection between All Might and the villain who could steal quirks. Bakugo's frustration was evident as he demanded answers, and Izuku acknowledged the truth of his suspicions. Bakugo declared that they both wanted to be like All Might, and he challenged Izuku to a fight right then. On the field of 𝐼𝐻𝐽, Izuku pleaded with Bakugo to reconsider, suggesting they could spar during training instead. Bakugo insisted that if they fought in class, someone would intervene, and he needed to see what made Izuku worthy of All Might's attention. He reflected on their childhood memories of All Might, emphasizing that no matter how dire the situation, he always emerged victorious. Bakugo prepared for the fight, warning Izuku to get ready if he didn't want to get hurt. Izuku protested, but Bakugo charged at him, launching an explosion that singed Izuku's leg. Izuku winced in pain, and Bakugo taunted him for overthinking, urging him to come at him. As the fight escalated, a security bot arrived at 𝐼𝐻𝐽, alerting them that 2 students, Izuku Midoriya and Katsuki Bakugo of Class 1A, were present after curfew. Contacting the homeroom teacher now, Aizawa was working on his computer when the bot's voice came through the intercom. The bot informed him that his students were loitering around at 𝐼𝐻𝐽 and that he was responsible for them, urging him to go get them. Aizawa felt annoyance at the interruption and wondered who would be foolish enough to be awake at such an hour. As he stepped outside, he spotted a figure approaching, wrapped in bandages. The sight shocked him as he recognized Izuku and Katsuki, both breathing heavily. Katsuki was launching explosions while Izuku was skillfully dodging. Katsuki's earlier words echoed in Izuku's mind, making him realize the weight of their situation. Izuku pleaded for Katsuki to hold on, questioning the necessity of their fight. Katsuki, consumed by anger, ignited mini explosions in his hands, refusing to acknowledge Izuku's concerns. Izuku insisted that Katsuki's perspective was not wrong, but Katsuki's frustration only grew. He recalled how Izuku had always been behind him, no matter how many times he had tried to push him down. Katsuki demanded Izuku not to run away but to fight him instead. He unleashed a blast that clouded Izuku's vision with smoke, but Izuku quickly spotted a bright light emerging from the smog. Katsuki launched his autocannon attack, forcing Izuku to move swiftly to evade the onslaught. Activating full cowl, Izuku dodged Katsuki's attacks, but Katsuki retaliated with a front kick to Izuku's face. Izuku countered with a powerful kick of his own, sending Katsuki stumbling back. Concerned, Izuku approached him, offering a hand, but Katsuki smacked it away, insisting he didn't need anyone's worry. Katsuki expressed his inner turmoil, revealing the pain of feeling overshadowed by Izuku's growth and recognition from All Might. Tears welled in his eyes as he lamented his own perceived weakness and the events that led to All Might's downfall. Izuku realized that Katsuki had been brooding over this for far longer than he had, feeling the weight of their shared history. As Katsuki rushed at him, Izuku understood that this battle might be futile, yet he felt compelled to fight. Just as Katsuki prepared to unleash another attack, Izuku responded with a swift kick, determined to test his abilities against his longtime rival. Katsuki soared above him, launching an explosion to propel himself downward, but Izuku narrowly avoided the blast. Katsuki, refusing to let Izuku think, attacked from behind, landing a gut punch that sent Izuku crashing against a metal fence. Katsuki pressed on, determined to keep the pressure on Izuku. Izuku realized that if the fight continued, 𝐼𝐴 would suffer damage, and he didn't want a repeat of their previous training experience. He resolved to take the battle elsewhere, using full cowling to leap away, with Katsuki hot on his heels, demanding he return. Izuku jumped from rooftop to rooftop, aware of Katsuki's relentless pursuit. When Katsuki finally caught up, he initiated a powerful attack, gathering energy for a devastating move. Izuku recognized the technique from the sports festival and knew he had to act quickly to avoid it. Katsuki unleashed his howitzer impact, creating a massive explosion that sent Izuku crashing through a wall and into a building. The shockwave echoed through the area, waking a certain red-haired classmate. Izuku struggled to rise, feeling the effects of the blast. He surveyed the familiar surroundings of 𝐼𝐴, recalling their first combat training experience and the chaos that had unfolded there. The building Izuku crashed into was the scene of a hostage situation. He noticed 3 chairs with ropes near the back wall. As he turned to the hole in the wall, he heard Katsuki's voice emerging from the smoke, his silhouette becoming visible. Katsuki remarked that Izuku had previously claimed he wouldn't be his punching bag anymore, questioning why that had changed. Despite the pain in his back, Izuku managed to rise. He realized that Katsuki wouldn't let him leave or take the fight elsewhere. He had no choice but to confront him. Suddenly, an idea struck Izuku. He pulled his arm back and leaped, lifting his right leg as he activated full cowling. He felt a change within himself, realizing he could now use 8% of One for All. With the addition of shoot style, he believed he could execute one of All Might's moves in his own way. Green lightning crackled around him as he declared his attack. One for All, full cowling, 8%, shoot style. New Hampshire smash. Izuku propelled himself toward Katsuki, and the force of the air pressure sent them both soaring out of the building. Katsuki felt a sharp pain as Izuku's elbow struck his stomach. Izuku crashed into the mid-level of another building, while Katsuki doubled over, overwhelmed by the impact. Izuku, catching his breath, expressed disbelief that his plan had worked. However, before he could contemplate further, an explosion erupted from the roof, sending smoke and debris cascading down. Katsuki acknowledged that Izuku had gotten a good hit in, but he was ready to unleash his full power. Katsuki concentrated, preparing a blast from his hands. Izuku recognized the danger and knew he had to act quickly. He activated full cowling and jumped out of the hole just as Katsuki unleashed his attack. The blast barely missed Izuku, singeing him as he fell to the ground. Katsuki followed him down, and once Izuku regained his footing, Katsuki taunted him about the attention he had garnered from their fight, including from 𝐼𝐴. Izuku's anger flared at the insult directed at someone he cared about. He demanded that Katsuki take back his words. In an instant, Izuku appeared before Katsuki and delivered a powerful kick to his face, insisting that he would not allow such disrespect towards someone who had supported him. Katsuki, momentarily taken aback, expressed his disdain for Izuku's caring nature, claiming it made him unpredictable and frustrating. Despite the tension, Izuku stood firm, ready for whatever came next. Katsuki blasted himself into the air, declaring that he wouldn't lose. Izuku followed suit, leaping to confront him. Katsuki unleashed a series of mini-explosions, which Izuku narrowly dodged, though some hits landed. In response, Izuku executed a Delaware smash, pushing Katsuki back but not stopping him. The two continued to exchange blows, each determined to outlast the other. As they caught their breath, both fighters focused intently on the battle ahead. 𝐾𝐞𝐭 vowed to finish the fight with a powerful blast, while Izuku resolved to tap into his new limits to secure victory. They charged at each other, each preparing their ultimate attack, calling out their names in a fierce battle cry. Time seemed to slow as their fists approached one another, ready to collide. Just as the moment reached its peak, a voice interrupted, commanding them to stop. Both fighters froze, their attacks halted mere inches from each other. All Might, in his slimmer form, stood before them, a look of concern on his face. He had intervened just in time, preventing a potentially devastating outcome. 𝐶𝐻𝐼 expressed his regret for not realizing the gravity of the situation sooner. 𝐾𝐶𝐽 questioned why Izuku had become the focus of attention since the sludge incident, leaving the air thick with unresolved tension and emotions. Out of all people, why him? 𝐶𝐻𝐼 reflected on the situation, acknowledging that even though 𝐾𝐶𝐽 felt powerless, he embodied the spirit of a hero more than anyone else. He could see the strength within 𝐾𝐶𝐽, who was already on his path, so he decided to give him the chance to walk that road as well. 𝐾𝐶𝐽, however, felt weak. He had always wanted to be strong like 𝐶𝐻𝐼, but now he felt inadequate, especially after everything that had happened. 𝐶𝐻𝐼 reassured 𝐾𝐶𝐽, explaining that it was not his fault. He was nearing his limit regardless, and this was his destiny. He recognized 𝐾𝐶𝐽's strength but admitted that he had been distracted by it, inadvertently placing a burden on him. He pulled 𝐾𝐶𝐽 into a close embrace, apologizing for treating him like an adult when he was still just a boy. 𝐾𝐶𝐽 gritted his teeth and pushed away from the former #1 hero. 𝐶𝐻𝐼 continued, sharing the lessons he had learned from being a hero all these years. He expressed his love for winning, much like 𝐾𝐶𝐽, and his longing to save those in need, similar to Izuku. He emphasized that if either aspect were missing, he could never have stood for justice. He pointed out that Midoriya looked up to 𝐾𝐶𝐽, and 𝐾𝐶𝐽 had a spirit that Midoriya admired, but their rivalry had created tension between them. He urged them to respect each other and lift one another up, as they could become ultimate heroes together. Silence enveloped them as 𝐾𝐶𝐽 stared at the ground, feeling the weight of the conversation. He muttered a dismissive word under his breath, expressing his frustration. Both 𝐶𝐻𝐼 and Izuku looked at him as he sat down on the ground. 𝐾𝐶𝐽 then declared that he would get stronger for their next fight, determined to surpass Izuku. He paused before asking who else knew about the situation. 𝐶𝐻𝐼 informed him that only Recovery Girl and Principal Nizu were aware, and he appreciated 𝐾𝐶𝐽's willingness to keep the secret. He then explained the origins and purpose of One for All, emphasizing the importance of keeping it confidential. 𝐾𝐶𝐽 realized the gravity of the situation and questioned 𝐶𝐻𝐼's judgment. 𝐶𝐻𝐼 defended himself, stating that he had not anticipated the dangers that would arise. He suggested they wrap up their conversation as they needed to meet with 𝐼𝐬𝐼, who wanted to speak with them while he dealt with their classmates. As they approached another building, 𝐶𝐻𝐼 noticed several eyes watching them from a distance. He called out, urging those hiding to come forward. Class A emerged, including Tsuyu, Momo, Kaminari, Kirishima, Achiko, Shoto, Siro, Ida, Koda, and Mina. The others had chosen to stay in due to the late hour. Izuku felt relieved that Shoji or Jiraiya had not come along, as they would have discovered the secret of One for All. Ida inquired about their presence outside after curfew, while Achiko noticed the injuries on Izuku, particularly the burn on his arm, which shocked her. Kirishima expressed concern, suggesting that they had been fighting. The others were skeptical, but Achiko pointed out the visible bruises and scratches, confirming her observations. Ida demanded to know what they were doing, questioning if they had been trying to harm each other. 𝐶𝐻𝐼 intervened, calming Ida and explaining that he needed to take Izuku and 𝐾𝐶𝐽 to 𝐼𝐬𝐼, who was ready to scold them. He advised the others to return to their dorms to avoid the same fate. As they left, Kaminari expressed confusion about not questioning them further, but Ojiro suggested they had received their answer. Shoto reminded them that All Might had said they would explain everything after facing 𝐼𝐬𝐼's reprimand. Mina believed the others would be informed later, while Momo pointed out the need for rest before classes in the morning. Once they were alone, 𝐶𝐻𝐼 led Izuku and 𝐾𝐶𝐽 to the teacher lounge, where Aizawa awaited them. Izuku felt a sense of dread, while Katsuki was frustrated about being restrained. Aizawa, radiating an angry aura, confronted them about their fight after the exam, sarcastically noting their energy levels. Toshinori quickly took responsibility, explaining that Katsuki had felt guilty about his retirement and had struggled with his feelings of inferiority towards Izuku. Aizawa sighed, acknowledging that this was a serious matter that required punishment. He asked who had thrown the first punch, and both Katsuki and Izuku admitted to their roles in the fight. Aizawa declared that they would both be on house arrest, 4 days for Katsuki and 3 for Izuku. During that time, they would be responsible for cleaning communal spaces and writing an apology. He instructed them to tend to their injuries without relying on Recovery Girl's quirk and sent them off to rest. Afterward, they made their way to the infirmary, where they patched themselves up without assistance. As they worked, Katsuki initiated a conversation, expressing his feelings of resentment. Izuku paused, curious about what Katsuki meant. Katsuki revealed that he had always looked down on Izuku for being quirkless, yet he felt that Izuku was somehow ahead of him, creating a complex mix of emotions. Katsuki had grown distant, struggling with feelings he didn't want to acknowledge. As they entered their teenage years, he and Izuku wore their old 𝐼𝐼𝐷 Junior High uniforms. Katsuki reflected on their rivalry, admitting that he had tried to prove his superiority but ultimately failed. After entering nothing had gone as he expected. He spent countless days analyzing Izuku's strengths and weaknesses. Now, in their dorm clothes, Katsuki expressed his regret for the hurtful things he had done, including the cruel remarks he made in middle school. He took back everything he said about Izuku's girlfriend and understood that he couldn't ask for forgiveness. Instead, he wanted to salvage any chance he had to regain Izuku's trust and friendship. Izuku looked at Katsuki, sensing a change in him. This was not the 𝐾𝐿 he remembered. Instead of bullying, Katsuki was seeking redemption. He acknowledged their troubled relationship and the extreme nature of Katsuki's past words. Despite the pain, Izuku had always admired him and was willing to allow Katsuki a chance to redeem himself. As Katsuki extended his fist, Izuku recalled a similar moment from their childhood. They had made a pact to become rivals and challenge each other. In a flashback, young Izuku walked through a jungle with Katsuki, who held a butterfly net while Izuku carried a basket. They discussed their quirks and the possibility of competing against each other. Katsuki proposed that they declare themselves rivals when they entered and Izuku eagerly accepted. Back in the present, Katsuki reminded Izuku of their deal. Izuku agreed to continue their rivalry, and Katsuki grinned at his response, determined to surpass him. Their bond had transformed, allowing them to become proper rivals. Meanwhile, in the Heights Alliance dorm, 𝐼𝐼𝐷 𝐸 sat on her bed, contemplating her feelings for Izuku. She felt anxious about confronting her emotions, especially after witnessing another girl near him during the exam. Despite her initial belief that she only liked him as a friend, she realized that she was in love with him. Determined to confess her feelings, 𝐼𝐼𝐷 knew she had to act quickly. Even though the timing was less than ideal due to Izuku's recent conflict with Katsuki, she felt an inner urge that this was her only chance. It was now or never for her to express her love for him. Just staring at the starry sky, the zero-gravity quirk user thought she saw some stars forming a constellation that resembled the face of the green-haired boy from her class. His million-watt smile made her blush and smile in return. She had recently come to terms with her feelings and decided it was time to confess her love for him. Suddenly, she recalled the words of her classmate, Yuga Aoyama, who had asked if she liked him. With a sigh, she acknowledged that Aoyama was right. It wasn't just a simple like, she loved him deeply. Ever since he saved her from the zero-pointer during the entrance exam, 𝐼𝐼𝐷 had developed feelings for Izuku Midoriya. Although she had been confused about her emotions at first, everything was now clear. 𝐼𝐼𝐷 𝐸 held genuine feelings of love for Izuku, and she knew she had to confess. Deep down, she sensed that she wouldn't be the only one to confess her feelings. She wanted to be the first and hoped to be his only girlfriend. She thought about how she couldn't just walk through the dorms to reach the boys' side without waking everyone up. That would prevent her from expressing her feelings. So, she activated her quirk, causing herself to float. With determination, she decided to sneak over using her abilities. 𝐼𝐼𝐬 jumped into the air, floated gracefully, and landed softly on the roof, relieved that she hadn't made too much noise. As she stood up, she walked over to the boys' side of the dorms and slid down towards a balcony connected to Izuku's room. Peering through the glass, she saw him sleeping peacefully. Meanwhile, in his room, Izuku was having a pleasant dream about his future. With All Might retired, it was now his turn to become the next symbol of peace. He envisioned himself as the new #1 hero, fighting alongside his friends, including his childhood friend. In his dream, Iida asked him if being the #1 hero was all he wanted or if there were other things he desired, like having a girlfriend. This thought made him blush. His mother had also asked him when he would meet his Juliet, as she always hoped he would find someone special, date, and eventually marry, giving her adorable grandchildren to spoil. However, Izuku had never considered such things for himself. Throughout his quirkless life, he faced humiliation from both male and female classmates. Valentine's Day was particularly tough, filled with pranks and mockery. All these experiences led him to believe he could never get a girlfriend due to his quirkless status and being labeled useless Deku. That was until he met 𝐼𝐼𝐬 𝐸𝐼𝐜𝐬. Unlike the other girls, 𝐼𝐼𝐬 was kind and sweet, making him feel good about himself. He remembered how great she looked in her school uniform and hero costume, which made him blush. He even found himself wondering what she would look like in a Santa Claus outfit, though he quickly dismissed the thought, reminding himself that they were just friends. Unfortunately for Izuku, his innocent thoughts turned his peaceful dream into something more mischievous. Suddenly, he found himself back in his bedroom, but something felt different. Smoke filled the air, and he heard a voice calling out to him in a sing-song tone. It was 𝐼𝐼𝐬, appearing in a Santa Claus outfit just as he had imagined. However, she wore only the jacket, and the sight made him blush even more. As she approached him, sitting on his lap and placing her hand on his shoulder, Izuku felt a mix of confusion and excitement. She smiled at him and playfully asked if he had thought about what he wanted for Christmas, which was still 6 months away. He stammered, unsure of how to respond, caught up in the dream's surreal atmosphere. I'm a student here, I have friends, and 𝐾𝐿 and I have made up. Uraraka-san approached closer, leaning in as if to share a secret. She whispered something that made Izuku's heart race. He felt a mix of emotions, caught between reality and a dream. In the real world, 𝐼𝐼𝐬 quietly opened the sliding door to Izuku's room, careful not to disturb him. She crouched down beside his bed, admiring how peaceful he looked while he slept. Her heart fluttered at the thought of him dreaming about her. Suddenly, something caught her eye. She noticed a bulge in his shorts, and her cheeks flushed with surprise. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Curiosity got the better of her, and she contemplated her next move. As she hesitated, she felt a rush of emotions. Was she really that drawn to him? She decided to take a chance, gently pulling at his shorts. At that moment, Izuku stirred in his dream, feeling a strange mix of sensations. Dream 𝐼𝐼𝐬 playfully teased him, and Izuku found himself lost in the moment. He was overwhelmed by the sensations, feeling a connection that was both thrilling and confusing. In the real world, 𝐼𝐼𝐬 was caught in her own whirlwind of emotions. She couldn't help but wonder about her feelings for him. As she continued to explore her curiosity, she felt a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. Izuku, still dreaming, was caught up in a whirlwind of sensations, feeling as if he were floating on air. He was unaware of the reality around him, lost in a dream that felt all too real. As the moments passed, both 𝐼𝐼𝐬 and Dream 𝐼𝐼𝐬 were caught in a dance of emotions, exploring the boundaries of their feelings for Izuku. Each moment was filled with anticipation, and they both felt the weight of their unspoken desires. As the dream continued, Izuku's heart raced, and he felt an overwhelming sense of connection with both versions of 𝐼𝐼𝐬. He was caught between two worlds, each filled with possibilities and emotions he had yet to fully understand. In that moment, everything felt electric, and the lines between reality and dreams blurred, leaving them all wondering what would come next. Izuku groaned as he felt a wave of relief wash over him, collapsing onto his bed, his breath coming in heavy gasps. 𝐼𝐼𝐬, meanwhile, was struggling to catch her breath, feeling overwhelmed by the intensity of the moment. She wiped her mouth and playfully remarked on how much he had released, a teasing smile on her face. As she noticed him stirring awake, she hinted that he might be in for a surprise. Izuku blinked, still dazed, and asked what she meant. 𝐼𝐼𝐬 assured him that he would enjoy what he found when he fully woke up. She felt a slight discomfort in her throat from their earlier encounter but couldn't deny the thrill of it all. As Izuku finally sat up, he was taken aback when their eyes met, a moment of silence hanging between them. 𝐼𝐼𝐬 greeted him with a shy smile, and he was confused about what was happening. She quickly placed a finger over his lips, urging him to be quiet. She explained that they needed to keep their classmates from waking up and that she had something important to confess. After a moment of hesitation, she revealed her feelings for him, expressing how her admiration had grown into something deeper since their first meeting. She took his hands in hers, her eyes sparkling with sincerity as she declared her love for him. Izuku was momentarily speechless, overwhelmed by the confession from the girl he had admired for so long. He finally found his voice, expressing that he felt the same way about her, appreciating her kindness, determination, and beauty. 𝐼𝐼𝐬's face lit up with joy at his words. As the atmosphere shifted, she leaned closer, their faces inches apart. She asked him if he would kiss her, and after a brief moment of contemplation, he nodded. They shared a tender kiss, filled with emotion, before breaking apart to catch their breath, a string of connection lingering between them. Grateful for the moment, 𝐼𝐼𝐬 smiled at him and suggested they use each other's first names now that they had confessed their feelings. Izuku agreed, and they settled into a comfortable silence. However, 𝐼𝐼𝐬 soon fidgeted, looking a bit nervous as she asked him a personal question about his experience. Izuku blushed and admitted he was still a virgin, which surprised her. She then hesitantly asked if he would be willing to share that experience with her. He was taken aback but listened as she explained that her mother had given her some precautionary pills, just in case. After a moment of thought, he agreed, and she prepared to take the next step. As they moved closer, 𝐼𝐼𝐬 playfully reminded him that they both needed to be comfortable. They shared a moment of nervous anticipation, and as they began to explore this new chapter together, they focused on the bond they were building, cherishing the trust and affection that had blossomed between them. 𝐼𝐼𝐬 felt incredible as she wrapped her arms around Izuku's neck. He held her by the waist, and they shared a moment of closeness that deepened their connection. 𝐼𝐼𝐬 expressed her excitement, urging him to continue with enthusiasm. Izuku, feeling the intensity of the moment, responded with determination, wanting to make her feel even more pleasure. As they moved together, 𝐼𝐼𝐬's expression showed her delight, her eyes sparkling with joy. She encouraged him to keep going, her excitement palpable. Izuku noticed a spark in her gaze, reminiscent of the dreamy look she sometimes had, filled with affection and admiration. Switching positions, Izuku held her legs, and they continued to share their bond, each movement bringing them closer together. 𝐼𝐼𝐬 felt a wave of emotion building within her, and she communicated her feelings to Izuku, who remained focused on their shared experience. Izuku, determined to give his all, activated his quirk, and the energy around him intensified. He began moving with renewed vigor, and 𝐼𝐼𝐬 was taken aback by the sudden rush of exhilaration. She encouraged him, her enthusiasm growing with each moment they shared. As they continued, Izuku felt a surge of energy, and he shifted their position, laying her gently on the bed while maintaining their connection. 𝐼𝐼𝐬 felt the intensity of their bond, and they both knew they were reaching a peak of emotion. After a moment of shared exhilaration, they paused, catching their breath. Izuku carefully set 𝐼𝐼𝐬's legs down, and they both relaxed, feeling the warmth of each other's presence. 𝐼𝐼𝐬 turned to him, expressing her admiration for the experience they had just shared, and Izuku responded with a smile, acknowledging her words. They snuggled together, enjoying the comfort of each other's company. 𝐼𝐼𝐬 felt a sense of contentment wash over her, and as she looked at her hand, an idea sparked in her mind. She turned to Izuku, ready to share her thoughts. Izuku felt a mix of surprise and curiosity when 𝐼𝐼𝐬 suggested they could go for another round. She had a playful smile on her face as she proposed a new idea. With a twinkle in her eye, she lifted her pinky finger, hinting at something special. She explained her thought, mentioning how they could use her quirk to enhance their experience. As she activated her ability, they both floated gently towards the ceiling, creating a unique atmosphere. Izuku was amazed by her creativity and asked if she was sure about this, considering the limitations of her quirk. 𝐼𝐼𝐸 reassured him, recalling how they had trained for their exam and how she had managed to stay airborne while using her powers effectively. Feeling confident, she playfully positioned herself, inviting him to join her in this new adventure. Izuku recalled a conversation he had overheard about different positions, realizing that this was a playful twist on what he had learned. With a mix of excitement and nervousness, he approached her, ready to embrace the moment. Izuku surrendered to the moment. With his eyes closed, he focused on bringing her joy. After a few more movements, he decided to change their position, gently lifting her legs and adjusting her angle. He recalled a term he had heard before, thinking to himself that it was called wheelbarrow. He confirmed to himself that he had positioned her correctly. 𝐼𝐼𝐸, feeling a mix of curiosity and disappointment, wondered why he had lifted her legs and paused. Izuku remained silent, his expression hidden beneath his hair. After trying this twice, he felt a strange sensation. It wasn't just about making her happy anymore. He sensed a longing to take charge, to guide her in a way that would deepen their connection. The answer was clear as crystal. Izuku Midoriya was determined to make 𝐼𝐼𝐸 feel more joy than ever before. He wanted her to feel so good that she wouldn't be able to walk until the next day. A smirk appeared on his face as red and pink lines covered his body from top to bottom once again before he leaned closer to her ear, preparing for an unforgettable experience. He teased her, suggesting that she might even call him something special during their time together. When 𝐼𝐼𝐸 heard this, her eyes sparkled with excitement as she held a playful grin. She eagerly expressed her longing for him, urging him to take charge and make her feel incredible. Izuku was more than happy to oblige, ready to give her everything she wished for. With a surge of energy, he activated his quirk, ready to move at incredible speeds. As he began, 𝐼𝐼𝐸 was completely captivated, lost in the moment. She encouraged him to go harder, reveling in the sensations he was creating. Izuku felt a rush of exhilaration as he pushed himself to give her the experience she craved, whispering sweet words that made her heart race. 𝐼𝐼𝐸 responded with enthusiasm, expressing her love and longing for him, urging him to dominate the moment. Izuku promised to fulfill her every wish, and they shared a deep connection that transcended words. As they continued, the intensity of their feelings grew, and they both felt a wave of emotion wash over them. After their passionate exchange, they collapsed onto the bed, breathless and exhausted. Izuku felt as if he had expended more energy than during any battle. 𝐼𝐼𝐸 looked up at him, trying to regain her composure. She playfully noted how overwhelmed she felt, realizing just how intense their time together had been. Seeing her struggle, Izuku quickly grabbed a trash can, ready to help her if needed. 𝐼𝐼𝐸 appreciated his thoughtfulness, and after a brief moment, she managed to gather herself. They shared a warm embrace, feeling grateful for each other's presence. As they snuggled, 𝐼𝐼𝐸 turned to him, curious about the depth of his feelings. Izuku reassured her of his unwavering love, promising to protect her always. They shared a sweet kiss, and 𝐼𝐼𝐸 complimented him on how amazing he was. Izuku was slightly confused by her playful teasing, but he brushed it off as he checked the time, realizing how late it had become. They both knew it was time to rest, but before settling down, Izuku opened the sliding door to let in fresh air, wanting to clear the atmosphere. 𝐼𝐼𝐸 asked him about his plans once his house arrest was over, and he eagerly agreed to go on a date with her. They discussed their plans, excited for their first outing together. As they settled into bed, they exchanged goodnight wishes and shared one last kiss before drifting off to sleep, embracing one another tightly. Little did Izuku know, 𝐼𝐼𝐸 was just one of many girls who would come to care for him deeply. Next time on Hunt for the Green Bunny, Chapter 10, Meeting the Big Three. Peacefulness. That was the only way to describe the moment happening in the dorm room of Izuku Midoriya. He was currently sleeping with his newly confessed girlfriend, 𝐼𝐮𝐬. They had smiles on their faces after the enjoyable night they shared a few hours ago. Unfortunately, this moment was interrupted by the clock, counting down. In 3, 2, 1, the alarm blared, announcing its presence. Izuku slammed his fist on his all-might alarm clock, silencing the voice, and rubbed his eyes to shake off the remnants of sleep while groaning. He attempted to get up, but 𝐼𝐮𝐬 held him tighter, reluctant to let him go. She murmured, expressing her longing to stay in their cozy embrace for just 5 more minutes. Izuku, however, reminded her that they had responsibilities. 𝐼𝐮𝐬 groaned but eventually opened her eyes, still feeling drowsy. She looked at him with her cute, sleepy face and pointed at her cheek, asking for a morning kiss. Izuku smiled and leaned in to fulfill her request. They shared a sweet kiss for a moment before breaking apart, and Izuku began changing the sheets on the bed while 𝐼𝐮𝐬, despite her lingering fatigue, managed to find some strength in her legs, though she nearly tripped. Izuku was there to help her regain her balance. They quickly dressed and 𝐼𝐮𝐬 moved toward the sliding door, stating that she had to return to her duties. She expressed her affection for him before leaving, and Izuku replied in kind. After she departed, he finished changing the sheets and headed to the bathroom to freshen up for the day. Upon entering, he found his friend Iida brushing his teeth. Iida greeted him cheerfully, and Izuku waved back while washing his face. Iida then inquired about Bakugo's situation after the previous night. Izuku explained that Bakugo had been scolded and received a punishment of house arrest for 3 days, while he himself had 4 days of similar punishment. They had also written an apology to Mr. Aizawa and were required to clean the common space during this time. Iida reacted with surprise, noting that the others would likely hear about their predicament. As expected, the news of their house arrest shocked their classmates, while some were not surprised, having anticipated consequences for the previous night's events. They expressed their disbelief and concern, but Kirishima pointed out that at least Izuku and Bakugo had reconciled. The 2 boys nodded in agreement. Iida reminded Izuku that they would miss the opening ceremony due to their punishment, and 𝐼𝐮𝐬 asked Bakugo about his plans regarding the supplementary lesson for the provisional license. Bakugo dismissed the question, frustrated. Before leaving, 𝐼𝐮𝐬 gave Izuku a thumbs up, signaling that they were safe from any unintended consequences. Once the others departed, Izuku and Katsuki were left to clean the floor together. Izuku asked Bakugo for his thoughts on his shoot style, to which Bakugo critiqued his wind-up motions, suggesting they were too exaggerated for effective combat. Izuku took the feedback positively, determined to improve. Meanwhile, Class 1A was walking down a hallway, with Iida urging everyone to line up quickly for the opening ceremony. 𝐼𝐮𝐬 noted that Aizawa-sensei was likely busy, and Ojiro commented on how things had changed since last April. Kirishima spotted Nito Monoma from Class 1B, who taunted them about their failures in the licensing exam. Denki remarked on Monoma's usual antics, and Kirishima reminded him of Monoma's previous struggles. Monoma boasted that all his classmates had passed, which caused Shoto to hang his head in shame. Kirishima encouraged him, insisting it wasn't his fault. Suddenly, a blonde girl with horns and hooves, Pony Tsunatori, introduced herself as a transfer student from America, expressing her excitement for the upcoming classes. Kirishima was eager to engage with her, while Monoma whispered something to her that caused shock among the others. As they continued, Hitoshi Shinso, another familiar face, approached, and Iida apologized for blocking the way. Shinso commented on their lack of progress, and Tokoyami recalled his previous encounter with Midoriya at the sports festival, noting that Shinso seemed to have grown stronger. Siro commented that something seemed off. Kendo noticed that Izuku was missing. She asked where Midoriya was. Testu pointed out that Bakugo was also absent. Kirishima explained that the 2 had fought after curfew and were now under house arrest, surprising most of Class 1B. They expressed disbelief, especially about Midoriya's involvement. Meanwhile, Monoma was laughing loudly, declaring that he knew Bakugo would do something reckless. Kendo quickly silenced him with a swift neck chop, stopping his rant. Iida suggested they move on, and they all headed toward Ground Beta, where Principal Nizu was preparing for the second semester opening ceremony. 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐬 greeted everyone cheerfully, making a speech about his fur and how it was perfect, which some found irrelevant and overly long. He then addressed the recent disruption in their lives, referencing the incident from the previous summer when they lost their symbol of peace. He warned that society needed to prepare for upcoming challenges, especially for those in the hero course, including the second and third years involved in work studies. He emphasized the importance of being aware of the threats they would face. Mina questioned what work study meant, and 𝐒𝐮𝐬 explained that it was likely the next step after their internships. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 acknowledged the somber mood and assured them that the adults were working hard to keep things positive, hoping to instill a strong work ethic in the students so they could become capable members of society. He concluded his speech with a bow before stepping down as 𝗟𝗏 approached him, complimenting the brevity of 𝐒𝐮𝐬's address. 𝗏𝗏 gazed into the distance, recalling the aftermath of Izuku and Katsuki's fight. The mention of inheritance sparked a memory of a conversation he had with 𝐒𝐮𝐬 about finding a successor. He reflected on how 𝐻𝐬 was the perfect environment for young talent. 𝗟𝗏 took the microphone next, introducing Hound Dog, the school life supervisor. Hound Dog struggled to maintain his composure, barking in frustration as he tried to convey that 2 students had been fighting the previous night. After a chaotic speech, he managed to clarify that they needed to control themselves and adapt to dorm life. As the students began to disperse, a girl with long periwinkle hair tapped her blonde friend's shoulder, excitedly sharing that she knew one of the fighters, a first year who was known as the world's youngest hero. The boy grinned, intrigued by her revelation. In Class 1A's homeroom, Izawa stood at the podium, addressing the class, which was missing Izuku and Katsuki. He announced that they would return to their regular classes, acknowledging that a lot had happened but it was time to focus on business as usual. He warned them that while today would be a lecture, they should prepare for more intense training in the second semester. Mina leaned back in her chair to speak with 𝐒𝐮𝐬, expressing her belief that the class would be boring. Izawa's glare made her freeze, and he asked if she had something to say. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 raised her hand, asking for clarification on what a work study entailed. 𝗟𝗃 chimed in, recalling 𝐒𝐮𝐬's mention of it, while Tokoyami and Momo expressed their interest as well. Izawa scratched his neck, admitting he had planned to discuss work studies later but would explain it now. He described it as hero work outside of school, a more immersive experience than their previous internships. Achiko realized that this meant their hard work at the sports festival might not have been their only opportunity. Ida noted that getting scouted at the festival was just one option. Sato tried to calm Achiko, who was becoming overly excited. Izawa explained that students would use their connections from the sports festival to secure work studies, emphasizing that those who hadn't been scouted would find it challenging to find positions. He clarified that the competition had changed the landscape for applicants. After finishing, he instructed everyone to take their seats. Achiko apologized for jumping to conclusions, and Izawa reminded them that earning provisional licenses would provide valuable experience, though there was little precedent for licensed first years. With the sudden increase in villain activity, the possibility of first-year work studies was being cautiously considered. Izawa mentioned that they would revisit this topic later, promising a more complete explanation and some actual testimonials before he walked out the door. Present Mike then burst through the door as Izawa exited, announcing that first PRD was English, the class he taught. He expressed excitement about taking the stage again, eager to engage the students with a packed schedule for the day. Back at Heights Alliance, Izuku was lifting weights, feeling no pain in his arms, especially after his recent fight with Katsuki. He recalled the doctor's warning after the training camp attack, which advised him to be careful not to overexert himself. He reflected on his training, deciding that it might be best to focus on his kicks and work on his shoot style for a while. Later that evening, everyone returned from classes. Mineta inspected how well Izuku and Katsuki had cleaned the place, only to find some dust. He smugly asked Bakugo about it, who pointed out that Izuku was supposed to handle the cleaning. Bakugo then took it upon himself to clean up the missed spots, surprising everyone with his unexpected willingness to help. Kaminari dramatically exclaimed that the world was ending, but J.𝐼RU used her quirk to quiet him down, reminding him that while Bakugo's behavior was surprising, it didn't mean disaster was imminent. The group discussed their classes, with Sato and Kirishima expressing their exhaustion. 𝐤𝐬 mentioned her interest in work studies, and Ojiro shared his thoughts on wanting to work with the same heroes they had interned with. Izuku overheard their conversation and felt a pang of anxiety about falling behind. Ida, noticing Izuku's distress, posed a question about his feelings of being left out, while Bakugo dismissed him with a retort. As Izuku collected trash to dispose of, he became lost in thought about the work studies and his perceived gap in knowledge compared to his classmates. In his distraction, he almost missed seeing a boy's face appear on the wall. The boy smiled and pointed out that Izuku could throw the trash away with the rest of the burnables. After a brief exchange, the boy floated back into the wall, leaving Izuku bewildered. Days passed, and Izuku was finally off house arrest. He turned in his written apology to his sensei, changed into his school uniform, and returned to class. He expressed his regret for the trouble he had caused, feeling a sense of urgency to make up for lost. His classmates welcomed him back, and Kirishima encouraged him, noting that his fighting spirit remained intact. As class began, Aizawa announced that they could now discuss the work studies. He opened the door to reveal guests who had experience in the field. Izuku's eyes widened in shock as he recognized the top 3 third-year students, known as the Big Three. They entered the classroom, and Izuku marveled at their presence, recalling their impressive reputations. His classmates reacted with awe, noting the girl's beauty and expressing surprise at the trio's appearance. Izuku focused intently on the tall blonde boy, finally remembering him from the sports festival the previous year. He left a really weird and awkward impression. He remembered how the blonde boy's clothes had come off because of his quirk during the festival race, and how he had to put his breathes back on while the other competitors looked on in confusion. He thought about how those other 2 weren't ranked that high, but they were U.S. Big Three. He wondered what kind of heroes they were. Aizawa instructed the students to introduce themselves, starting with Amajiki. The dark-haired boy stared intensely at the class, creating an overwhelming atmosphere. Ida mentally noted the intensity but was puzzled by Amajiki's attempt to view the class as potatoes, which only resulted in him seeing their heads as potatoes instead. He stuttered, expressing his frustration at not being able to make them look like anything other than people. Feeling overwhelmed, he faced the wall and declared he wanted to go home. The entire class was confused by this outburst. Ojiro asked if he wasn't considered the best of the best in the hero course, but received no response. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐸, the girl beside Amajiki, encouraged him to have the heart of a lion instead of a kitten, introducing herself to the class. She then began asking questions, starting with Shoji about his mask, wondering if it was for health reasons or just for style. She quickly moved on to Todoroki, inquiring about the scar on his face, and then to Ishido, asking about her horns, and finally to Mineta, questioning the nature of his ball. Her enthusiasm was infectious, and she suggested a Q&A session. Kaminari commented on her airheadness, while Mina noted that her questions sounded childlike. Mineta, in a gleeful tone, remarked on the nature of his own question, while Momo covered her mouth in disgust. Siro clarified the misunderstanding, and 𝐒𝐽𝐬 then approached Izuku, excitedly asking about his quirk and the power behind his punches. Izuku explained that his stockpile quirk allowed him to gather power, but it came with the risk of injury if he exceeded his limits. Aizawa felt annoyance growing as 𝐒𝐽𝐬 continued her barrage of questions. Mirio, the blonde boy, reassured Aizawa that he was the main act. He leaned forward, teasingly hinting at the future, only to declare it would be awful, which left the class bewildered. They had not expected such odd behavior from the Big Three. Tokoyami noted the mixed reactions of the first years, who were unsure of what to make of the situation. Mirio proposed a challenge, suggesting that the first years take him on, which shocked the class. Aizawa remained silent as he led them to Gym Gamma, where they changed into their gym uniforms. Mirio encouraged them to give it their all, while Tamaki expressed his reluctance to engage in such a challenge. 𝐒𝐽𝐬 chimed in with a cautionary tale about a student who had given up on being a hero, emphasizing the importance of perseverance. As the first years prepared themselves, Mirio invited them to come at him. Izuku, filled with determination, stepped forward, eager to prove himself against you, 𝐒𝐮𝐲𝐻𝐬 best. He activated his full 𝐿𝐬, ready to demonstrate his growth. Sato, Ojiro, and Kirishima joined him, forming a close combat squad, while everyone else braced for the challenge. Suddenly, Miryu's clothes passed through him, causing a commotion among the students as they witnessed the unusual sight. Miryu apologized for the mishap, trying to fix his attire while Izuku seized the moment to launch an attack. However, his kick went right through Miryu, who had a phasing quirk, leaving Izuku to realize just how challenging this encounter would be. What should he do? As he turned to look at Izuku, Miryu commented on the choice of target. Just then, Aoyama's lasers, Mina's acid, and Sero's tape shot through Miryu's face, only to obliterate the rock behind him. When the smoke cleared, Miryu was nowhere to be seen. Aizawa pulled out his phone and started a timer, muttering that it had begun. Ida exclaimed to himself that Miryu was gone, just as he reappeared behind 𝐽. He announced his intention to take out the long-ranged fighters, causing 𝐽 to scream in surprise. Kirishima remarked on the unexpected nature of Miryu's quirk, questioning if it was more than just phasing. Tamaki noted that it was Miryu's technique that was impressive, not just his quirk, while Aizawa's timer ticked down. Aizawa reminded his students that Miryu Togata was the closest to being the top hero, including the pros. Miryu roared with power, and Izuku and the others were stunned to see their long-range fighters taken down so swiftly. Shoto, standing near Aizawa, expressed his shock at the speed of Miryu's victory. Aizawa challenged Shoto, asking if he wasn't interested in being number one, to which Shoto replied that he hadn't even received his provisional license yet. Miryu assessed the remaining fighters, noting that they were all melee combatants. Kirishima expressed his confusion about facing someone who could phase through objects and warp as well. Miryu dismissed the flattery, emphasizing that the level of admiration from the first years was indicative of their inexperience. Tamaki reflected on Miryu's hard work and training, suggesting that the students needed to recognize the effort behind his abilities. Izuku theorized that there must be a trick to Miryu's quirk, proposing that the warping was a function of his phasing. He suggested they take a step back and form a strategy to counter Miryu. Kirishima praised Izuku's insight just as Miryu charged at them, phasing through the ground and leaving his breaths behind. Miryu emerged from the floor behind Izuku, who anticipated the attack and attempted to kick him. Miryu's quick reflexes allowed him to phase his arm forward, countering Izuku's move. He announced his ultimate move, and Izuku braced himself, believing he would be attacked. Instead, Miryu phased through and landed a blow to Izuku's solar plexus, leaving him breathless. Miryu noted that many opponents tried to counter his moves, but he had trained to counter those counters. He encouraged Izuku to take a break, expressing hope for his future improvement. Ida called out to Izuku just as Miryu appeared behind him again. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 commented on Miryu's strength, while Tamaki reflected on Miryu's capabilities since childhood. Miryu continued to demonstrate his power, defeating the first-year students, except for Shoto, who had not participated, and Katsuki, who was still under house arrest. Aizawa noted the time it took Miryu to defeat them, while Shoto remained speechless at the scene. As time passed, the students began to regain consciousness after their encounters with Miryu. Miryu apologized for any unintended exposure and asked if they thought his quirk was strong. Sero and Toru expressed their agreement, while Mina questioned if Miryu was a hybrid like Todoroki. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 excitedly identified Miryu's quirk as permeation, and Miryu confirmed it, explaining that what they referred to as warping was a function of his quirk. Izuku inquired about how it worked, and Miryu explained that activating his quirk allowed him to pass through anything, including the ground. Achiko realized that it was like falling through the earth. Miryu elaborated that when he deactivated his quirk underground, he was propelled back to the surface, controlling the angle of his emergence. Mina compared it to a glitch in a video game, and Miryu laughed in agreement. Tsuyu acknowledged the strength of his quirk, while Miryu clarified that it was his training that made it powerful. He explained that while his quirk was active, he couldn't absorb oxygen, hear sounds, or see light, leaving him with a sensation of endless falling. Kaminari expressed his concerns about the complexity of using his quirk, likening it to trying to pass through a wall. He explained how he activated his quirk on his body while leaving one leg free, allowing him to phase through the wall. He worried that rushing the process could lead to mistakes, and the inability to feel anything would make him freeze up. He recalled how he used to take his time to be safe but often ended up falling anyway, which was embarrassing. However, he realized that if he wanted to reach the top with his quirk, he needed to predict movements faster than his surroundings could change. Foresight was essential, and experience was the only way to develop that skill. He emphasized that their fight was necessary because experience teaches more than words ever could. During their work studies, they were treated like professionals, facing life-and-death situations that provided invaluable experience. He clenched his fist, declaring that he transformed his work-study experience into the power to reach for the stars, encouraging the first years to embrace the challenge despite their fears. The class was impressed and began to clap, acknowledging his words. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 commented on how he spoke like a professional, while Momo noted how he accomplished in a week and a half what would typically take 3 months. Kaminari reflected on his own internship experience, recalling how they were treated more like guests than participants. J.Ro added that they were never allowed to try anything dangerous. Aizawa announced it was time to head back, prompting some students to question the purpose of their visit. They expressed gratitude for Mirio, who had allowed them to observe. Izuku noted that Mirio's quirk came with many downsides and required a lot of experience and foresight to use effectively. He recognized Mirio as 𝐒𝐮𝐬 top student, not just because of his strength, but due to his dedication. As Mirio, Tamaki, and 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 walked down the halls of the school, 𝐒𝐮𝐽 commented on how the opponents they faced appeared unharmed, which was impressive. Mirio reflected on how close the situation had been, joking about nearly being exposed. 𝐒𝐮𝐽 expressed her curiosity about the students they had encountered, particularly Izuku, wondering what kind of hero he would become and how he would manage the drawbacks of his quirk. Mirio agreed, noting how Izuku had analyzed his moves and predicted his actions accurately, believing that 𝐼𝐻 would take an interest in him. Meanwhile, at the dorms, students discussed their experiences at Gym Gamma. Izuku was in his room, calling 𝐼𝐻𝐻. The elder pro hero initially expressed surprise at the call, reminding Izuku that he rarely reached out. 𝐼𝐻𝐻 was busy with a case involving the League of Villains and couldn't assist him. Izuku acknowledged his inexperience but insisted he was determined to become the top hero. 𝐼𝐻𝐻 suggested that if Izuku wanted guidance, he should speak with his mentor, who was dedicated to educating him. In a distant location, police were investigating a confrontation between the League of Villains and the Shy Hosaikai. Sir Night-Eye and his sidekick, Bubble Girl, reviewed the report, noting that both groups had engaged in a brief but intense conflict. They discovered evidence of casualties on both sides, including a member of the League of Villains and a deceased Hosaikai member. Night-Eye recognized the leader of the Hosaikai, Kai Chisaki, also known as Overhaul, from a photo he examined closely. To be continued. Next time on Hunt for the Green Bunny, Chapter 11, Meeting Sir Night-Eye. Encountering the strange man and a little girl. Izuku felt stressed and frustrated because it was his girlfriend's birthday, and he wanted to make it special for her. One of Izuku's 7 girlfriends, Achiko Uraraka, was the first to confess her love for him at an unexpected moment, which led to him forming relationships with other girls. She was perfectly fine with sharing him. He paced back and forth in the common area of Heights Alliance while his daughter, Eri, sat on the couch, watching cartoons and munching on apple slices. The recent Christmas party had just passed, and he realized that her birthday was only 2 days away. This realization sent him into a spiral of thoughts. What should he do? What would she want? What gift should he give? He shook his head, dismissing a troubling thought. He was certain that Eri would want something better than what he had initially considered. Since Tsuyu, Kyoka, Momo, Mina, and Toru had come into the picture, he had spent less time with Achiko, but he knew she enjoyed their time together. He turned to Eri, affectionately calling her Snowball. He asked her what they should get for Mommy Achiko's birthday. Eri thought for a moment and suggested that something amazing would be good. Izuku agreed but felt uncertain about what would be considered amazing. He decided to take a walk to clear his mind. It was settled he would give 𝐒𝐻𝐬 quality time with him. Since the other 6 girls had joined, his time with 𝐒𝐻𝐬 had been limited to just 1 day a week. He recalled the schedule: Momo on Mondays, Kyoka on Tuesdays, Tsuyu on Wednesdays, Mina on Thursdays, Toru on Fridays, and 𝐒𝐻𝐬 on Saturdays. Sundays were reserved for all of them to spend time together, which often led to chaotic but fun moments. He reminisced about a particularly wild Sunday when Momo and 𝐒𝐻𝐬 had entered the male bathroom to spend time with him. They had engaged in a playful debate about who he preferred more. Izuku's face had turned bright red as he found himself in an awkward yet amusing situation. That day had been memorable, but not as much as when the wild pussycats had visited. He chuckled to himself, recalling the chaos that ensued. He pondered where they could go for their special outing. Should they sneak away like teenagers or do something to make the occasion special? He decided that they should go somewhere before the main event. After considering various options, he settled on the idea of a movie date. He remembered that he had saved up some money from his allowance and thought it would be nice to take her to see the movie she had been wanting to watch. He believed it was called 𝐿𝐼𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐿. With his plan in mind, he headed back to the dorms. Upon returning, he found 𝐼𝐻𝐬 in the kitchen, making a cake for 𝐒𝐻𝐬's birthday. 𝐼𝐻𝐬's eyes lit up at the sight of the apples being used for decoration. Izuku asked if 𝐒𝐻𝐬 was in her room, and 𝐻𝐻𝐬 confirmed she was. Izuku explained that he was taking her out for a special occasion and asked 𝐻𝐻𝐬 to hide the cake until later. 𝐻𝐻𝐬 agreed and placed the cake in the oven, asking Izuku if it was like another date. Izuku nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. He made his way to the girls' side of the dorms and knocked on 𝐒𝐻𝐬's door. When she answered, he greeted her with a cheerful, "Happy birthday, Machi," and invited her to the theater for a second date as her birthday present. 𝐒𝐻𝐬 was thrilled and quickly went to get her jacket. When she returned, she wore a soft red jacket and wrapped her arm around his as they headed to the elevator. Meanwhile, 𝐻𝐻𝐬 was entertaining 𝐼𝐻𝐬, who was engrossed in a Disney movie. As they approached the door, 𝐼𝐻𝐬 spotted her parents leaving and asked where they were going. Izuku smiled and told her that he was going to spend time with Mama. Uncle 𝐻𝐻𝐬 and the others would be there for her. They would be back soon. She waved goodbye to her parents as they left through the door. The couple walked to the teacher's lounge to ask for permission to leave the campus. Toshinori and Aizawa exchanged glances before nodding in agreement. "Very well. You two may go, but make sure to return by curfew. Otherwise, you lovebirds will be spending house arrest together," Aizawa said sternly. They nodded and exited the room. Toshinori turned to the erasure hero. "Didn't you have a date with Ms. Joke, Aizawa?" "We went on one, and to be honest." Aizawa turned slightly, a hint of pink on his face. "It went pretty well. I assume you will go on another one." "We're thinking about it, and a date has been set. Tomorrow is when it will happen." Meanwhile, Izuku and 𝐒𝐻𝐬 walked down the street toward the nearest theater, embracing each other as they took in the sights of the city. "Oh, Deku, look at that!" She pointed at the lights of a store that looked magical. "Wow, amazing!" Izuku exclaimed. Suddenly, heroes on patrol passed by. One resembled a tiger while the other appeared to be a sidekick. "Oh, that's the tiger hero, Jaguar. And that's one of their sidekicks," Izuku said excitedly. However, the sight reminded 𝐒𝐻𝐬 of something. "Deku, do you remember the incident during our joint combat training against Class B?" The joy faded from Izuku's face as he recalled that day. It had been a terrible experience for the classes in the hero course. "How could I forget? The day when Shigaraki and the League of Villains attacked us after the joint training. How they tried to get our snowball. And how that villain showed up again." He clenched his fist, feeling the familiar surge of anger. "It angers me that they tried to do that." Seeing her boyfriend's rage, 𝐒𝐻𝐬 stopped walking and hugged him tightly. "Yeah, me too. But after the attack, seeing you like that, on the verge of death." The memory of his fading form flashed in her mind. "I don't want to relive that, Deku. I don't want to see you almost dying on me again." Izuku felt her tears soaking his shirt. After the battle, he had been left in critical condition, nearly losing his life. Thankfully, he had been saved. He embraced her tightly as she sniffled and sobbed against his chest. "It's all right, Machi. I'm still here. She pulled away from him, wiping her tears as a smile began to form on her face. Come on, we're going to be late. She nodded, and they made their way to the movie theater. A woman sat at the ticket booth and greeted the couple as they approached. Welcome to our theater. How can I help you? We're here to see the latest Disney movie, Zootopia, Izuku said, handing over the money. The woman took it and pressed some buttons on the machine, producing 2 tickets that she handed to them. Here you go. Enjoy the movie. Izuku and 𝐼𝐼𝐬 bowed in gratitude before entering the theater. They got their popcorn and soda and headed to the doors of the screening room. Once inside, they took their seats and began watching the film. As they observed the 2 main characters, Judy Hopps and Nicholas, Nick, Wilde, Izuku felt a connection to them. Judy aspired to be Zootopia's first bunny police officer but faced bullying for her dreams. Nick, who wanted to join the Boy Scouts, had also been mocked and discriminated against for being a predator. Izuku remembered his own struggles as a quirkless child. He recalled how Katsuki's friends had held him down while Katsuki attacked him with his quirk, mocking his dream of becoming a hero. The bullying he faced for something he couldn't control weighed heavily on him. After the movie ended, the 2 walked out of the theater. I loved the movie. It was so good. Did you like it, Deku-kun? 𝐼𝐼𝐬 asked. Yeah, it was a good movie, he replied, recalling the positive moments, like how Judy and Gideon made amends, similar to how he and Katsuki had reconciled after their own conflicts. The couple then walked back to the school and entered the dorms. Upon arrival, they noticed all the lights were off. Izuku understood what was happening while 𝐼𝐼𝐬 looked confused. Suddenly, the lights turned on, momentarily blinding them, and confetti exploded around them. Surprise! Happy birthday, 𝗟𝗏𝐼𝐬. 𝐼𝐼𝐬's face lit up with joy as her friends celebrated her birthday. 𝗏𝗏 placed a beautifully decorated cake on the table, and she admired it. The fruits arranged on it resembled her features, with red berries for her eyes and hair, apple slices forming her face, and brown icing representing her hair. Yeah. Sorry if I couldn't make it into your face, 𝗟𝗏𝐼𝐬, 𝗏𝗏 remarked. Don't worry, 𝗏𝗏. It looks great. Thank you all for doing this, she smiled, feeling grateful for the birthday party. The others began presenting her with gifts. Shoto gave her some Japanese treats and sweets. Momo handed her a box, which made her blush upon seeing its contents. Momo winked at her, and 𝐼𝐼𝐬 thanked her for the thoughtful gift. Tsuyu gifted her some mochi and a picture of their friendship. Toru presented her with cute items, while Mina gave her dancing CDs to help improve her moves. Kaminari and Kirishima surprised her with a gaming console, the Steam Deck, along with games for Nintendo and PlayStation. When she asked how they managed to get it, they explained they had saved money from their parents, which made her very happy. Tokoyami presented her with something that reflected his edgy personality, while his shadow bird friend allowed her to pat him, adding a unique touch to the celebration. It was the best head pat. Aoyama had given her some cheese and something shiny, which he described as dazzling. Ojiro presented her with training gloves and a training bag for her gunhead martial arts. Sato's gift was a selection of desserts he had made himself. Shiro, without a gift of his own, offered her some yen, which amounted to about $50 in U.S. currency. Katsuki, knowing he needed to make amends with his friend, surprised her and everyone else with a small silver statue of her favorite hero, 13. Kirishima exclaimed in astonishment at the gift, while Kaminari asked how much it had cost. Katsuki replied casually, stating it was almost $100 in American currency, causing the electrification and hardening quirk users to fall back in shock. Next up was Mineta, who had forgotten her birthday and attempted to promise her a fun time, only to be met with extreme anger that sent him crashing through the floor. Koda gifted her a bunny with green fur. Shoji presented her with a poster filled with stars in the night sky. Ida gave her a trendy outfit from Momo's family fashion brand, which catered to various types of businesses. Lastly, Eri gifted her a drawing she had made of herself with her Mama and Papa in a group hug. Despite not being an experienced artist, the drawing was adorable enough to tug at their heartstrings, especially when Eri smiled proudly at her creation. After all the gifts were exchanged, The birthday girl cut her cake, and pieces were shared among her classmates. Smiles and laughter filled the room. When Izuku was with Ichiko, he decided to reveal something special. He mentioned he might have a second present for her, pulling out a small item for protection. A grin spread across her face as she agreed to meet him in his room. He tucked the item away and headed to his room, while she turned to Eri, explaining that she would be staying with her Uncle Mirio, Tamaki, and Auntie Nijire for the night. Once in the elevator, Ichiko made her way to Izuku's floor. Upon entering his room, they shared a passionate kiss, expressing how much they had missed each other. They began to remove their clothes, and as they embraced, the atmosphere became charged with excitement. They found themselves on his bed, and the moment was filled with warmth and affection. As they enjoyed their time together, the door unexpectedly opened, revealing the rest of their friends who had come to join in the celebration. They were dressed in playful outfits, ready to add to the fun of the evening. The energy in the room shifted, and everyone was eager to join in on the festivities, making it a night filled with laughter and camaraderie.